and derailed the case. What on earth is going on? Have the lunatics once again taken over our asylum system? Get into its usual ways, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so. But now here's your headlines, and it's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock. Well, the top story this hour, Sir Keir Starmer has co-chaired a high-level meeting on security guarantees for Ukraine, as Donald Trump is ruling out sending US troops to the ground if a peace deal is reached. Instead, the president suggested that the US could help by air, warning that Vladimir Putin would face a rough situation if he refuses to cooperate in the peace process. It comes as reports suggest Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky have agreed to a one-on-one meeting within the next 2 weeks, with Switzerland signalling it's ready to host that conversation. Well, after yesterday's Oval Office talk, Zelensky called the discussions significant, saying that Ukraine is already working on concrete guarantees.
After this productive meeting with the President and then with all our colleagues, with the partners, we confirmed that we are ready for a trilateral meeting. And if Russia proposed to President of the United States bilateral, and then we will see the result of bilateral, and then it can be the trilateral. So I said always, so Ukraine will never stop on the way to peace, and we are ready for any kind of formats, but on the level of leaders.
Sir Keir Starmer has said that the so-called coalition of the willing has also made real progress and will continue talks with Washington in the days to come.
Today's meeting was good and constructive, and there was a real sense of unity between the European leaders that were there and President Trump and President Zelensky. These were the two outcomes that were the most important coming out of today. They're positive outcomes. There was real sense of unity. We've made real progress today.
But leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, told us here on GB News the UK needs to increase its support for Ukraine.
Still fear that Trump is driven by a desire to get a deal with President Putin and is putting that above the long-term interests of Ukraine and of European security. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's a deal that Ukraine would willingly sign up to. I think the best response that Britain could make would be to strengthen the hand of Zelensky at negotiations by offering to increase our support for Ukraine, for example, with British Typhoon jet fighters. I think we have to make sure that Ukraine goes into those negotiations in the strongest possible way.
A woman nicknamed the Ketamine Queen is set to plead guilty over the overdose death of Friends star Matthew Perry. 42-year-old Jasveen Sangha has agreed to admit 5 charges in Los Angeles, including distributing ketamine, resulting in death. That's according to the US Justice Department. Perry was found dead in a jacuzzi at his LA home in October of 2023. And a coroner ruled his death was caused by the acute effects of the drug. Sangha is one of 5 people, including doctors and Perry's own assistant, accused of exploiting his addiction for profit and supplying the drugs that led to his death. Here, the Chancellor is weighing up a major shake-up of property tax. Rachel Reeves is considering a new levy on homes worth more than £500,000, which could replace stamp duty on owner-occupied properties. The move comes as the Treasury is also exploring fresh ways to raise revenue while still keeping Labour's pledge to protect the state pension triple lock. UK grocery price inflation has dipped slightly, now standing at 5% in August. Market research firm World Panel says prices were 5% higher than a year ago in the 4 weeks to the 10th of August, down from 5.2% in July, though still, they say, well past the point at which rises really start to bite. It follows a steady climb since June, when inflation was at 4.7%. That was the highest since January last year. And drivers are being warned of major delays this bank holiday weekend, with 17.6 million getaway trips expected across the UK. The RAC says the southeast and southwest will see the worst congestion, urging motorists to set off early or be prepared to spend longer in traffic. Friday this week set to be the busiest, with 3 million journeys, rising to 3.4 million on Saturday, then another 2.4 million forecast on Sunday, followed by 2.7 million on Monday. Just a few. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Next, let's take a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here are those all-important markets for you. The pound will buy you $1.3524 and €1.1573. The price of gold, £2,469.15. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,184 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now then, let's get cracking. The Home Office has dramatically stepped in at the High Court as judges weigh up whether Epping's Bell Hotel can continue housing asylum seekers after we had expected to get a ruling today. But that didn't happen. Let's now speak with GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. It's impossible to say how significant this ruling was, not only for Epping, but for the entire nation. Could locals have the power? Could councils have the power to close down asylum hotels? Today we expected clarity. Instead, it seems it descended into farce. Tell us more.
Well, there's no doubt this 11th hour intervention by the Home Office has thrown a real old spanner in the works. To wait until the judge was actually sitting down in court to give his ruling on the application for an injunction by Epping Forest District Council, to then say that they wanted to intervene to present their side of the argument because there were widespread ramifications, seems extraordinary, given that they, like everyone else, would have been perfectly aware for many days that Epping Forest District Council were coming here to the Royal Courts of Justice to apply for an injunction to stop the Bell Hotel being used as an asylum seeker hotel. Now, quite what that means in terms of the ruling today, whether he will actually accept the Home Office intervention, we're still waiting for. The judges were told imminently about to rule on whether he will actually accept this last-minute intervention. But to give you an idea, Martin, of how the council is feeling about this, we've had a statement, well, not a statement, but delivered live in the courtroom by Philip Coppell KC, acting on behalf of Epping Forest District Council. He said that the intervention by the Home Office, KC, was a thoroughly unprincipled application made in a thoroughly unprincipled way, and that the department knew of the injunction bid last week but sat on their hands. And that's, I'm sure, what the judge is taking into account as well. But he will also be cognizant of the fact that, of course, there are widespread ramifications. And there are still more than 200 hotels right across the country that the Home Office uses through these subsidiaries, these contracted companies that go out, that buy up these hotels for 1 or 2 or more years to house migrants. And although that number of hotels has reduced since it was at a high of more than 400 under the Conservatives, there are still hundreds of hotels in use. So if this was to go in favour of Epping Forest District Council in terms of granting them this injunction, then the hotels, Somani Hotels Limited, who own the Bell Hotel in Epping, would have 2 weeks to get these migrants out of that hotel, to close it down, to return it to proper use as a hotel again. But as I say, we don't know where we are because all of it has been jammed up now by this unfathomable interjection by the Home Office at the very last possible minute.
Mark White, I'm just trying to help our viewers to get their heads around this. And indeed, I'm trying to make sense of this myself in real time because this is ridiculous. Was it the fact that the Home Office weren't aware of the gravity of this ruling? They hadn't read the briefs, they didn't know what was going on. Was it ignorance? Was it stupidity?
Martin,
or was it something more nefarious?
Some breaking news. Yeah, we've just had that ruling now. I'll read it out to you. High Court judge has ruled that the Home Office cannot intervene in Epping Forest District Council's bid for a temporary injunction blocking asylum seekers from using the Bell Hotel in Epping. Barristers, as I say, from the department have been told told a hearing on Tuesday that it should be allowed to involve itself in the case, as the injunction is not simply a narrow planning concern and has significant impacts more widely. The hotel's owners, so many hotels, perhaps not surprisingly, had backed the hotel in the Home Office in this last-minute intervention. But Mr. Justice Erie has just said, it is my assessment that the joinder of the Home Secretary is not necessary, so the court can determine all matters in dispute in proceedings. Nor is there an issue which it is desirable to have the Home Office, so the court can resolve it. It's all a bit wordy. He continued saying the consequences of the Home Secretary joining would be the loss of yet further court time. Good point, Judge. The impact of that is significant. Of course it is. The courts are in meltdown at the moment. The absolute backlog of cases that the civil courts, the criminal courts are having to deal with is very significant. And it seems to me that, you know, this intervention could have happened days ago when the judge was actually considering the evidence, not when he was sitting down to give his ruling, and that's clearly what the judge has decided as well. And we're told that Epping Forest District Council will discover within the next 30 minutes, Martin, if it has been granted a temporary injunction blocking those asylum seekers using it. Mr. Justice Erie said shortly after 3 o'clock that he would have a court draft of the judgment to barristers for the council and the hotel's owners, Somani Limited, within 30 minutes. So there we go. The judge is taking none of it from the Home Office. As I say, people really aghast at that last-minute intervention. Was it, you know, something that was intended to derail the process? Well, clearly it was certainly meant to intervene to get a favourable outcome on the Home Office, but it actually slaps of quite an incompetent decision by the Home Office legal teams here. Why on earth were they not fully cognizant of the fact, days ago, as everyone else was, that an injunction was going before the courts that was, you know, potentially not as just a narrow injunction that the council was applying for here, that could have wider ramifications. They waited till the last minute. Anyway, the judge doesn't think that his ruling is going to necessarily be a wider ruling, that it can be delivered within the confines of this particular narrow application for an injunction.
Mark White, we hear the phrase so often, the lunatics have taken over the asylum system. It's almost become a parody of itself. Ostensibly here, the Home Office tried to derail something at the last minute. The judge, you know, hats off to the judge, wigs off to the judge. You know, he's seen right through it. He's having none of it. This will now proceed. We should get a ruling, a yay or a nay. That's what people want in law, in life. Clarity. In the name of God, give us clarity. Where do we stand? That's all people want.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I have to bring a sort of a note of realism to the case as well, Martin. We had a flurry of similar injunctions back in 2022, you'll remember, with local authorities on those occasions trying to block the use of hotels as asylum hotels because the companies involved in the Home Office had not gone through the planning process. In each of those cases, injunctions were not granted. The councils failed, except one, and that was because it involved a hotel in a seaside resort, a hotel right on the coast, where the council was able, on a narrow point, to argue that actually that would not be appropriate to house asylum seekers there, that it wasn't conducive to the spirit of that location as a holiday resort, a coastal resort, and the injunction was granted in that particular case. Now, it might be that in the 3 years since those other injunctions, things have moved on. Judges are considering different evidence. They feel differently about an issue, in terms of case law from then. So it might go in their favour, but I just add the note of caution for those in Epping who might be hoping that this will rule in their favour, that previous court cases, bar one, have all ruled against those injunction proceedings.
What you're exactly right. And if Epping do get a result here, it certainly would have nationwide ramifications. No doubt people would feel emboldened across the entire nation. High drama at the High Court there, Mark White. Thank you for trying your very best to make sense of it and help me understand and help our beloved listeners and viewers make, sense of this nonsense we often hear at the High Court there, Mark White. Thank you very, very much. Always a pleasure. We'll come back to you for that ruling as and when it happens in about, now half an hour's time. Let's bring in my next guest now. And it's the former Labour advisor, Stella Santakidou. Stella, welcome to the show. An absolute pleasure to have your company as ever. We just heard their farcical scenes at the High Court. Utter farce. They don't seem to know what they're doing. Last-minute intervention. The judge saw right through it. And no matter where you stand on the principle, Stella, of should asylum hotels be allowed or not, surely the legal system just has to do its job and stop being some kind of donkey at the gate.
I think no matter where you stand on the refugee crisis more generally, this is just not a satisfactory situation for anyone, whether you are on the right or on the left. Even if you think that asylum hotels are fine, you cannot claim that this is a safe and comfortable situation, neither for the asylum seekers hosted in the hotel or for the local residents who have to put up with everything that is going on and the protests and everything else. Now, my question is, why is Robert Jenrick, who was immigration minister in 2022, when this specific hotel was acquired, and he was boasting about all the asylum hotels that he had managed to commission, why is it that he is not ashamed to go to these protests and pretend that he has been trying to solve this issue for the last, I don't know how many years? The Conservatives were in government for 14 years. How can they now claim that all of this is a new problem which the Labour Party should have dealt with within a year? Because no matter what you think about the asylum situation and the changes that I believe the Labour Party is going to be doing, and they are against asylum hotels, it is just practically a very difficult situation when you have managed to have the kind of backlog that you have without actually making any reforms to the system. So where do you put these people? Where are they supposed to put these people? We have a massive housing crisis.
Stella, surely you're not accusing a politician of doing a U-turn. They don't do that, do they?
Well, I have to say, on this one, I do agree with Nigel Farage. Robert Jenrick is one of the most dishonest politicians I have ever seen throughout my political career. I think it's absolutely astonishing how he can face these voters, these people in the eye, these concerned parents, but on the other hand, also, other people who are concerned about the safety of those who are legitimate refugees and who really do not deserve to be handed out like this, and tell them that this is a problem that he could have dealt with when he was the immigration minister who is responsible for this policy.
OK, Stella, I think you just cancelled your Christmas card there from Mr. Jenrick. On a serious point, Stella, what should be done about these asylum hotels? Let's start with Epping. Surely, if the council gets the right to close this down, that will show protest power is effective. The Home Office can't allow that, can they? Because if they do, as sure as night follows day, every asylum hotel in Britain will be facing the same treatment.
Yes, and on that point, you can have some sympathy with the government, right? It's a very difficult situation. On the other hand, nobody likes the asylum hotels. No community wants to have a hotel turn into an asylum hotel, because that is very bad for the local economy. That makes people feel uncomfortable, and they're right to feel uncomfortable. I mean, you know me, Martin. I'm in favor. I think that immigration should be a neutral term. I think that good immigrants are good and bad immigrants are bad, and that is that. And I don't want to see refugees being demonized the way they are right now. I find this very, very problematic for our society. But it is simply very reasonable to say you can't just completely ruin a local spot where you used to have wedding ceremonies and people used to go to have meals or weekends away, and now it is being turned into an asylum hotel.
Well, Stella, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and you agreed with Nigel Farage today. We're really, really getting somewhere with you, Stella. We really are. It's a beautiful pleasure to have on the show, honestly. Stella Santonikou, thank you very much for having you on the show as ever. Now, still to come, Portsmouth City Council has said they've been blindsided after asylum seekers there were put in the area without telling politicians or indeed the public. And guess what? They're now getting 40% off beach huts. I'll be joined by a local reform councillor who claims the entire establishment feels stacked against the British people. And also, Rachel Reeves' new home tax has been blasted as a poll tax for pensioners after it's emerged that the cruel new tax could force asset-rich but cash-poor OAPs to flog their family homes. The Chancellor's got a £50 billion black hole to fill, but why on earth should pensioners once again bear the brunt? That's next with me, Martin Daubney on GB News.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to 3:27. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Rachel Reeves is weighing up a radical shake-up of Britain's property taxes. Reports see Chancellor could scrap stamp duty and even council tax, replacing them instead with a new national levy on homes worth more than £500,000. Now, ministers say it could simplify the system, but critics warn it may leave millions of homeowners paying more money. Doesn't it always? Well, joined in the studio by GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster, and also the head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, great friend of the show, Elliot Keck. Welcome to you both. Catherine, let's start with you. Call me a cynic. Whenever things get overhauled, I think that means we're about to get stuffed for bigger bills. And in particular, what concerns me about this is the prospect of people with high-value homes through no fault of their own, or just a long time, or just good planning, pensioners getting stuffed with a big tax bill. Could this be a poll tax for pensioners?
Well, we don't know the details of how this will work or even if it will happen, but we do know that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has got a black hole of between 20 and 50 billion, depending on which figures
What's 30
you look
billion
at.
between friends?
And you know, she's going to have to put taxes up. We know this. We know this is going to happen. Where is she going to get this money from? So we understand, The Guardian have reported that they are looking at potentially scrapping stamp duty, which you pay when you buy a house, and replacing it with some sort of national property tax, which would be paid when you sell a house on £500,000 or more value. Now, it's not clear whether you would pay that in a lump sum or if you would pay that on an annual basis going forward. It would only be for owner-occupiers, so if you've got a rental property, stamp duty would continue to apply. But, of course, potentially it would hit people with houses, particularly in the south, let's face it, that have gone up a lot in value. You could have a situation of, you know, elderly people sitting on a lot of money in a house who actually don't have the cash on hand to pay. But look, she's going to have to raise money somehow. We also know that many of the Labour MPs are very keen on some sort of wealth tax. Could this be a wealth tax without calling it a wealth tax?
Elliot Keck, great moment to bring you in. I've seen these kind of property taxes before in countries like France. They're socialist tax grabs, and they generally hammer people who've got assets, but not a lot of cash, pensioners. And we saw entire suburbs of Paris socially cleansed of elderly people. Meanwhile, the yuppies move in and hoover up their property. They don't care about the extra cost. They can afford it. Back to Britain. It's still at the kind of the floating kites stage, but should pensioners be concerned?
Well, I think, as Catherine said, one of the problems is how little we know about this at the moment. What's clear is that inside the Treasury, they have teams working on the fact that there is quite a lot of property wealth now, particularly in the southeast, but in also other areas of the country that they're desperate to tap into. They're desperate to get their grubby little mitts all over it. I think, to take the more generous view, stamp duty is undoubtedly the worst tax the United Kingdom has relative to the amount of damage it does, to the amount of revenue it raises. That's something that everybody agrees with, left-wing economists, right-wing economists, centrist economists. So getting rid of stamp duty is a very noble aim. But what it looks like they're going to replace it with is something which is going to be sort of a wealth tax in all but name, essentially a tax on family homes. But what's really important is the mechanism for how it's paid. As Catherine said, if people that have already, if it's only charged at the point of sale, that's less damaging than if it's charged every year. But also critically, if the other key question is whether or not the people that have paid stamp duty on their homes, that already own their homes, are going to be excluded. So lots and lots of questions.
Catherine Forster, we hear all the time, oh, there won't be any more taxes on working people unless you're a farmer, unless you're a pensioner, unless you're a homeowner, unless you're a motorist. This is a tax on working people. It's just got a different name.
Well, it feels like a long time since Labour, during the election campaign, said, no, we will not put taxes up beyond very limited VAT on private school fees, non-doms and so on and so forth. Rishi Sunak said again and again, mark my words, Labour will put your taxes up, and so they have. I think it is worth saying, however, that the Conservatives, let's face it, in an attempt to get people to vote for them, did take 4p off national insurance, which was a big, big tax cut. They couldn't afford it. That did lay a trap for Labour into which they have fallen. But look, you know, the £22 billion black hole that Rachel Reeves said they inherited, some of that's questionable. That was what the last budget was supposed to deal with. She said she wouldn't have to come back for anything like that again. But here we go again, because they're not getting the growth that they need and the sums are not adding up. And meanwhile, the cost of government borrowing is currently at a high of about 30 years.
Elliot, final word to you. These taxes are generally hated and they can sink governments. Margaret Thatcher, the poll tax, the spare room tax, the bedroom tax, David Cameron, the garden tax, Jeremy Corbyn, the allotment zone, hilarious. He didn't get a chance to do that. Of course, the dreaded window tax, daylight robbery. Governments don't like things being... Sorry, the public don't like governments changing the rules to grasp more in. And it once again feels like the haves are just being absolutely pillaged to pay for the socialist have-nots.
Yeah, and it's particularly these sorts of pernickety taxes, fiddling around the edges, fiddling around the margins. People sort of broadly accept that there are going to be broad-based taxes on income and the things you buy, things like VAT, but when you're also being taxed on, the pint that you buy, the home that you buy, the car that you drive, the fuel that you buy, and all the rest of it, it just
literally
feels
the
like...
air you breathe.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like you cannot move without the Treasury, HMRC asking for a little bit more cash, and I think that's a very difficult way to maintain a social contract.
OK, Elliot, Catherine Forster, excellent stuff. Thank you very, very much indeed. Loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including Portsmouth City Council, which has said that they have been blindsided after asylum seekers were put into the area without telling politicians or indeed the public. I'll be speaking to a councillor next, and guess what? They're even given 40% off beach huts. You couldn't make it up. But first, here's your latest news headlines and with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon. The top stories at 3:30. Sir Keir Starmer has co-chaired a high-level meeting on security guarantees for Ukraine as Donald Trump rules out sending US troops on the ground. The president says the US could help by air, but warns Vladimir Putin will face a rough situation if he refuses a peace deal. The High Court has blocked the Home Office from interfering in Epping Forest Council's bid to stop asylum seekers being housed at the Bell Hotel. The judge said their involvement would only waste court time, with the council set to hear this afternoon if a temporary injunction is granted. A woman nicknamed the Ketamine Queen is set to plead guilty over the overdose death of Friends star Matthew Perry. Jasveen Sangha will admit 5 charges, including distributing ketamine, resulting in death after Perry was found dead in his LA home last October. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is weighing up a major property tax shake-up, potentially a new levy on homes worth over £500,000 to reduce stamp duty and replace it on owner-occupied properties. And drivers are being warned of major delays this bank holiday weekend, with 17.6 million trips expected. The RAC says the southeast and southwest will be the worst hit. On Friday, 3 million set to hit the roads, rising to 3.4 million on Saturday. Those are the headlines for now. More news at 4.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's quite a grey day for many today. Tomorrow starts off pretty drab, but it should turn sunnier. Again, not a lot of rain in the forecast. Slightly cooler feel tomorrow as well as this cold front sinks south. We've got this weather front across the southwest. That's been providing some heavy showers over Devon and Cornwall. Still a few of those moving through during this evening. The rumble of thunder isn't completely out of the question, but they do tend to fade away during this evening, disappearing by midnight, maybe affecting the Channel Isles. Bit of drizzle, perhaps at times in some central and eastern parts of England, but most places dry. Quite a lot of cloud, keeping the temperatures up again in the south, but clearer skies are arriving across Scotland, allowing temperatures to dip down well into single figures in the countryside, but also allowing plenty of sunshine here for Wednesday. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be another fairly grey start. Perhaps some breaks in the cloud across the south coast of both England and Wales. Northern Ireland and Scotland should have a brighter day than today. I know we've seen quite a bit of sunshine on the west coast of Scotland, but generally across the mainland of Scotland, we'll see the cloud breaking up through the morning to reveal some sunnier skies here during tomorrow. And I'm pretty optimistic across England and Wales too. That cloud will tend to break up through the morning. So by lunchtime, many places seeing lengthy spells of sunshine. May take a little longer in southernmost counties of England for that cloud to break, and still the possibility of some cloud at times affecting the east coast. But generally, it turns sunny through tomorrow. Temperatures about average for the time of year, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23 or 24 in the south. Feeling cooler on the east coast, but generally, you'll notice that cooler feel, more particularly in the evening, as temperatures fall away under what will be largely clear skies. The dry weather likely to continue for most of us into the weekend with a mixture of sunshine and cloud. Cooler mornings, but generally temperatures by day into the 20s.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. A road traffic incident on the A1 northbound at Tranent Junction is preventing access. Motorists should take an alternative route and allow extra time for their journeys. The A4042 northbound from Pontypool roundabout to Court Farm roundabout is closed for maintenance, with diversions. On the M25 clockwise at Junction 1B, 2 lanes are closed after a collision, causing half-an-hour delays. Normal conditions are projected to resume between 4:45 and 5 this afternoon. And on the trains, Greater Anglia and Stansted Express are experiencing major disruptions between Cheshunt and Hertford East, Stansted Airport and Cambridge. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. Time is 3:38 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, here's your chance to live mortgage or rent-free for an entire year and get a bonus $5,000 on top in your bank account in the latest Great British Giveaway. And guess what? If you haven't got a mortgage or rent to pay, no problemo. You can still win $15,000. Here's all the details.
We want to send some of those monthly financial stresses packing this August with your chance to be mortgage or rent-free for 12 whole months. We'll give you a cash lump sum that equals 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to an amazing £20,000. We'll also throw in an extra £5,000 on top of that for good measure, because why not? And if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, lucky you. We'll give you £15,000 tax-free cash instead. What are you waiting for? Lines will close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, the UK seaside city of Portsmouth's local authority has claimed it was completely blindsided after it learned that hundreds of asylum seekers have been moved into rental properties in the area, despite them telling the Home Office that it didn't have the capacity to house any more of them. Well, Portsmouth City Council discovered that 55 homes of multiple occupation, HMOs, were being used to house a minimum of 3 asylum seekers each across the city last week, with the total confirmed by the Home Office. However, it has now emerged that the city's council is offering asylum seekers 40% off beach huts, as well as discounts on paddleboarding, sailing, kayaking, swimming, gym lessons, and so much more. So, does the council want asylum seekers or not? Maybe it's time they made their minds up. Let's speak now to the Reform UK councillor and Portsmouth City Councillor, George Madgwick. George, welcome to the show. Let's start with the first story. It seems that the local Labour MP and the council haven't got a blooming clue how many asylum seekers have been foisted upon them by the Home Office.
No, I mean, that's the honest answer of the truth. We don't know, factually. It's been an absolute mess, Martin. I mean, this first come to light to me a few months ago, where I had residents contact me telling me that they were being evicted from their houses using Section 21s. because the landlord has signed up to a government scheme to take migrants. So I obviously immediately approached the council and said, this is what I'm being told, this is what I'm being shown. And the council said, no, absolutely not. We've had assurances that no more migrants would be coming to this city. They're not using any HMOs, fact. So I kind of went back and said, well, this can't be right. But it then transpired last week when an estate agent contacted me with an actual contract in their hands that showed unequivocal proof that an HMO that they were putting up for sale was used for migrants. So I went back to the council again, at which point they contacted the Home Office with the evidence, and the Home Office finally admitted it. And this is the first update we've had since 2023.
So, George, what that means in a nutshell is the Labour MP for Portsmouth North, Amanda Martin, she doesn't know what's going on. You on the council are being kept in the dark. The public haven't got a Scooby-Doo. They're always asked to find out. And it said the Home Office is on manoeuvres, doing this in the background.
Absolutely, Martin. And it's not just that. There's been multiple levels of assurances that we wouldn't get any more migrants. Say, originally, in 2022 and 2023, the council made it clear to the Home Office we don't want any more. When the Home Office approached recently the council to say, would you like to be on the asylum seeker pilot scheme, relocation scheme, our council said, no, we do not want to be on it. We don't want any more. Our ex-MP, Penny Mordaunt, who you will know was obviously the leader of the House of Commons, she went to Suella Braverman, who was Home Secretary at the time, and said, we don't want any more. She had assurances from Suella there wouldn't be any more. So what the Home Office have now done is use third-party contractors and private companies to then get their own landlords in Portsmouth to do it, and they have not told a soul. Nobody has known about this until recently, and it's shocking.
George, let's go on then to this second point. I would call this sending out mixed messages. On the one hand, the council say we don't want any more asylum seekers. On the other hand, they get a freedom card, 40% off beach huts, some of which were set on fire recently, I understand, 40% off paddleboarding, 50% off swimming and gym lessons, table tennis, climbing, discounts on cinema, even Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It sounds like a blooming holiday camp.
Doesn't it just? Wouldn't we all be so lucky to get such a leisure card offered to us? And not just that, discounts off local cafes for teas and coffees and theatre performances too. And you can even have a tour of our historic dockyard if you'd like. Yeah, I mean, it is completely mixed messages from our council. I mean, I think our council as an institution is separate, and this is what you need to remember, is separate to the administration, the political administration that is running the council. And I think the political administration that is running the council, which is Liberal Democrats, are very pro-migrant. So this is where these mixed messages are coming along. You know, we had the leader of the city council on film, caught on the steps of the Guildhall, chanting that he wanted more refugees in the city. So this is a real difficult situation in Portsmouth, and it's creating a real divide, and it's really at a boiling point.
OK, well, George Madrick, once again, the lunatics have taken over the asylum system, this time in Portsmouth. Thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. And our Home Office spokesperson told GB News this: we're continuing to expand the use of dispersal accommodation as part of our strategy to reduce reliance on costly hotels and deliver a more sustainable and cost-effective asylum system. And this approach is being implemented in close consultation with local authorities across the UK to ensure dispersal is balanced and community needs and concerns are taken into account. So there you have it. Now, it is the summer holidays, and that means that Brits are going abroad in their droves to enjoy the summer sunshine and to escape from Blighty. One place we know Brits love to travel to is Benidorm. So much so that we decided to send GB News' very own Doogie Beattie there to Benidorm to speak to British holidaymakers. Doogie Beattie, are you yet in your sombrero?
Oh, no sombrero, just shorts. Very unpopular, but it's that warm. We've decided to come into the bar. It's about 35 here, and we've met Sheffield's answer to Madge. Madge, why do you come here?
Because it's a nice place and cheap beer and nice atmosphere and nice music.
And where did you used to go before?
Turkey.
Right, thank you very much. And if you're looking for your weather in and around Europe, here is the holiday weather.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're thinking of heading further afield for a holiday, well, you can expect some thunderstorms across the south of France, the Alps, northern Italy. Breezy for Portugal, extending into Madeira and the Canaries, that breeze. Across much of Iberia, it's fine, but towards the north into Andorra, the south of France, more especially northern Italy and the Alps, some very heavy and lively thunderstorms are expected. Plenty of sunshine, meanwhile, for Greece. Temperatures back closer to average following the heatwave last week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
What on earth is going on at our university? So Professor Stephen Greer had worked for the University of Bristol for 36 years when his career was halted after a false accusation of Islamophobia. The issue arose when Greer taught about the Charlie Hebdo attacks during a human rights module, and a student who didn't actually attend the course complained. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Stephen Greer himself to explain what happened. Stephen, thank you very much. Tremendous to have you on the show. Can you just explain the circumstances that led up to you being accused of Islamophobia, please?
Well, out of the blue, or almost out of the blue, I received a complaint about a module I'd been teaching on a unit, a human rights unit, entitled Islam, China and the Far East, for nearly 15 years without incident. Which included the increasing critical literature about human rights issues in Islam, China, and the Far East. And my principally, as I said, the principal complaint, it did include a complaint about Charlie Hebdo, but the principal complaint was about the fact that I had referred students to the authoritative academic literature. And the student who complained was the president of BRISOC, the University of Bristol Islamic Society, who was a medical student who'd not attended any of the course himself, and he claimed to be acting on behalf of anonymous students. And there were all kinds of other procedural irregularities in the complaint, but the university decided to entertain it anyway. Okay. And I was exonerated after a 5-month inquiry. Then the university said, well, they were publicly announced. They took the module off the syllabus.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, very shortly, we're expecting the judgment on the Epping migrant housing case from the High Court. That, of course, is that story about the Bell Hotel in Epping. We're expecting a verdict earlier on this afternoon, around about 2 o'clock, but there was a last-minute, 11th-hour intervention from the Home Office. They said, right at the last minute, that they wanted time to present their case when they must have known this case was coming to court. Everybody did. We did. Everybody in Epping did. The hotel owners did. The government knew. Why did the Home Office leave it until the 11th hour, beg your pardon, to try ostensibly to delay, to throw stumbling blocks down? But the judge in the High Court was having none of it. Around about 25 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, Mark White reported from the High Court saying the judge was refusing the Home Office to allow this delay, and they are pushing for that verdict. We're expecting that verdict in the next few minutes. Mark White, our man, is there. Just to recap where we're at with this. So, of course, in the area of Epping, the locals have been protesting for a long time now, for a couple of years, actually, but it's come to a head of late because the whole topic has, and they are the council there, the Epping Forest Borough Council, have applied via Philip Coppell KC to have this premises ostensibly struck off, to lose the permission for it to be used for asylum seekers, and there it could be returned to its original purpose of housing the British public, tourists, the ordinary people. But at the 11th hour, the Home Office intervened, forcing this statement from Philip Coppell KC for the council. He said the Home Office's request was a thoroughly unprincipled application made in a thoroughly unprincipled way, and that the department knew of the injunction, the bid for it, last week. But, quotes, they sat on their hands. So the Home Office today, at the very last moment, as we said, they put this order in asking for more time when they could have done that days ago. They knew this was happening. And Mark White called this situation a farce, a total farce. Now, this hotel is owned by the Somani Hotels Limited Group. These owners have made a lot of money out of this area. They quite clearly would like this to stay open. This case is significant, not only for the residents of Epping, not only for the residents of the hotel, the asylum seekers, but I think for everybody in the United Kingdom watching on, because here's how this could play out. If this premises is no longer allowed or deemed fit for asylum seekers, that surely would set off a chain reaction across the entire nation, where every hotel protest group in the land would feel emboldened by it. And they would feel, right, let's step up our game. You see Robert Jenrick there, the Conservative MP, outside the area last night, although it's come to light earlier today. Back in 2022, it was Mr Jenrick who was pushing for more hotels for asylum seekers to open across the land. I digress. If this is closed down, surely it will set a chain of events going across the nation. And that is why Mark White was urging some caution in this ruling, because it is perhaps more likely that the government, the Home Office, will succeed, and it will continue as it is. We'll continue with the system of spending millions of pounds per day. We don't know how much, 5, 6, 7 million pounds per day on these hotels throughout the land. And I think that in itself will precipitate more protests. So all eyes on this ruling. We're expecting that ruling very, very shortly. And when we get it, we'll cross live to Mark White for a case which I think will be a junction in the road of the entire asylum hotel process system across the entire land. Plenty more reaction to that. The Epping migrant housing case in the next hour. We'll go back to Mark White for the very latest as it breaks with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, British Zoo Channel. Now it's time for your weather, and here's Alex Deakin.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's quite a grey day for many today. Tomorrow starts off pretty drab, but it should turn sunnier. Again, not a lot of rain in the forecast. Slightly cooler feel tomorrow as well as this cold front sinks south. We've got this weather front across the southwest. That's been providing some heavy showers over Devon and Cornwall. Still a few of those moving through during this evening. The old rumble of thunder isn't completely out of the question, but they do tend to fade away during this evening, disappearing by midnight, maybe affecting the Channel Isles. Bit of drizzle, perhaps at times in some central and eastern parts of England, but most places dry. Quite a lot of cloud, keeping the temperatures up again in the south. But clearer skies are arriving across Scotland, allowing temperatures to dip down well into single figures in the countryside, but also allowing plenty of sunshine here for Wednesday. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be another fairly grey start. Perhaps some breaks in the cloud across the south coast of both England and Wales. Northern Ireland and Scotland should have a brighter day than today. I know we've seen quite a bit of sunshine on the west coast of Scotland, but generally across the mainland of Scotland, we'll see the cloud breaking up through the morning to reveal some sunnier skies here during tomorrow. And I'm pretty optimistic across England and Wales too that cloud will tend to break up through the morning. So by lunchtime, many places seeing lengthy spells of sunshine. May take a little longer in southernmost counties of England for that cloud to break, and still the possibility of some cloud at times affecting the east coast. But generally it turns sunny through tomorrow. Temperatures about average for the time of year, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23 or 24 in the south. Feeling cooler on the east coast, but generally you'll notice that cooler feel, more particularly in the evening, as temperatures fall away under what will be largely clear skies. The dry weather likely to continue for most of us into the weekend with a mixture of sunshine and cloud. Cooler mornings, but generally temperatures by day into the 20s.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. There is no access to the A1 northbound at Tranent Junction due to a road incident. Motorists should seek alternative routes. The M61 northbound in Salford has a vehicle fire causing lane closures and a 15-minute delay. A broken down vehicle on the A38 westbound between Junction 3 Rothwell and Junction 2 Kelmarsh is noted. Normal traffic is expected later today. Kent's M25 clockwise at Junction 1B has a collision with 2 lanes closed and a 30-minute delay. And on the trains, Greater Anglia highlights disruption between Cheshunt and Hertford East, Stansted Airport and Cambridge. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you can win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a
Welcome back. Got some breaking news for you now from the High Court. Let's get straight to GB News' Homeland Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, what's the latest?
Well, Martin, a very significant development. The judge here at the High Court has just ruled that Epping Forest District Council can be granted an injunction blocking the use of the Bell Hotel in Epping for use as an asylum seeker hotel. I'll just confirm that Epping Forest District Council granted a temporary High Court injunction blocking asylum seekers from being housed at the Bell Hotel in Epping. This is seismic. It is a very significant decision. It flies against many of the decisions that we were talking about earlier, Martin, when injunctions were sought by a number of local authorities back in 2022, and all but one were denied, and the one that was granted was only because it was in a seaside resort right down on the seafront. But now this judge has granted a temporary injunction, so that means so many hotels that own the Bell Hotel in Epping will have 14 days to get those asylum seekers out of that hotel. The people, of course, in the local community will be absolutely delighted by this news. It is a vindication of the protests that have been taking place there so long. On occasions in recent weeks, of course, we've seen a more unsavoury element descending into some low-level violence, but actually, for the most part, these protests have been very peaceful, have been attended by mothers, children, other people in the community, very concerned about criminality that has been linked to the Bell Hotel in Epping. The judge has clearly taken all of that into account as he has now ruled in favour of Epping Forest District Council and granted this injunction that means that for the time being at least this hotel cannot be used to house asylum seekers. Perhaps the Home Office had a sixth sense. Perhaps they got wind of the fact that this was going to rule in the favour of the local district council. Whatever the reason, it seems it was, without a doubt, a farcical last-minute intervention by the Home Office trying to persuade the judge to accept extra evidence from them because of the wider ramifications of any decision he handed down today. Well, that judge dismissed that application, that last-minute intervention by the Home Office lawyers. He said he was not going to impact the court time that would have required to hear all of that new evidence on behalf of the Home Office. But there's no doubt, Martin, this will have wider ramifications, and the Home Office said it themselves. In fact, they said to the judge, as part of their efforts to try to get the judge to allow them to be heard at this hearing, they said they believed that actually granting this injunction would give impetus to more in the way of violent protests, perhaps a bit melodramatic, but that was what the KC for the Home Office was arguing to the judge. The judge was not swayed by that, granting, as I say, this injunction on behalf of the District Council.
Mark White, I think we're expecting a statement outside that High Court soon, but just to repeat, I don't think we can overestimate the significance of this, not just for Epping, but for the entire nation. We've seen asylum hotel protests breaking out all across the nation. Everybody watching this now, Mark White, will think people power works. Peaceful protest works. At last, the lawmakers are listening to the great British electorate.
Yeah, and I think there'll be some anger as well at the comments that I just mentioned there from the KC on behalf of the Home Office to suggest that actually what was going to be the net result of a decision to grant this injunction would be more violent protests rather than actually people feeling empowered to carry out more peaceful protests that we've seen in many hotels right across the country. Violence has been the very least of it. There have been many of these protests that have taken place. We saw them, of course, a few years ago when there were protests taking place that then kind of died down. But then in recent months, when we've seen issues of criminality, some really concerning cases that have been linked to migrant hotels, that has really galvanised the public across the country to feel that they don't want to see not just migrant hotels, but of course the new tactic that the Home Office has embarked on of trying to disperse migrants right into the heart of communities up and down the country into the likes of houses of multiple occupation. People don't want to see that either. What they want to see is either the boats being stopped or the migrants actually being housed in specially built camps that they can be held in away from communities. That's what this popular revolt has been about in outside migrant hotels right up and down the country. And yes, you're right, Martin, people will be buoyed, there is no doubt, by this decision handed down here at the Royal Courts of Justice today, granting that injunction, meaning that within 2 weeks, those migrants who have been at the centre of such concern and anger in that community in Essex will have to vacate that premises. The government will then have to find another location for those migrants to be housed in the interim.
And Mark White, you raise an excellent point there because, of course, this won't stem the flow. This won't smash the gangs. It won't stop the boats. It will merely mean the government could probably claim this as a victory as part of their stated policy directive to close down asylum hotels, to, quote, end asylum hotels in this governmental term. They can say, well, this is a victory. But now, Mark White, you're absolutely right. They'll be shifted into houses of multiple occupancy, perhaps in the hearts of the same very communities.
Well, absolutely. And of course, we saw, just recently down in Hampshire with that successful campaign, again, People Power, in operation in Waterlooville, where the public there managed to get a reversal on Home Office policy to use flats in the town to house migrants. So I think there's no doubt wherever these asylum seekers go, wherever the Home Office decides is the appropriate location, if it's within communities, people are going to object to that. They want to see migrants who have come over to the UK illegally, whether they've entered the asylum system after that or not. For many people, these are people that have broken into the country, that are gaming the asylum system, and they don't want to see them given the luxury of four-star hotels. They don't want to see them given the luxury of houses of multiple occupation, or given the luxury of jumping the queue ahead of many people in local communities who can't get council houses and other social housing, which are instead being given to asylum seekers. They want to go down the road of housing these people together in large numbers in purpose-built or specially adapted centres away from these populated areas, where they can be better controlled, where the conditions that they're living in perhaps are more austere. And austere for a reason, because that, in the view of those that are advocating the use of these migrant camps, would act as a disincentive in a way that luxury hotels are acting as a pull factor, Martin.
Yeah, a day and afternoon of high drama at the High Court, at the Royal Courts of Justice, Mark White, and I think we're getting a statement soon. We'll cross back to that, Mark White, as it happens. Thank you very much for that breaking news. And let's speak now with the local resident in Epping, Orla Minahane. Orla, welcome to the show. I know you've been very active in the protests, very active in the community there. Tell us initially, before we talk about what might happen next, tell us about your initial reaction to this dramatic victory for Epping residents.
Well, look, it's a victory. Of course, it's a victory. It's what we've been wanting. We wanted the Bell Hotel to be closed down. The problem is now, where are they going to put these men? So my concern is, in 2 weeks' time, the council have to find somewhere else to put these guys. Are they going to go into HMOs in the community? Are they going to be housed next door to the very residents that have stood outside the hotel week after week saying, we do not want these men here? And the problem is, and everybody can see this, Martin, there is no plan. The government don't have a plan. They've tried to step in at the last minute today with the High Court because they don't want to set a precedent for the rest of the country. Now that this has happened and the Bell has been ordered to close down, every city and every town across the UK is going to have residents outside trying to get the same thing to be agreed to close down the hotels in their towns. The problem is, where are they going to go? There is no room for them. If they put them in HMOs, the same residents are going to have an issue with the fact that undocumented, illegal immigrants are in the towns where they live, where their children go to school. And at the same time, in the last 6 days, 968 more migrants have come into this country illegally. The government clearly have no plan, they have no strategy, and it is just going to get worse and worse. So whilst, yes, this is great in one respect, because it's what we've wanted, I want to know, and the people of Epping are going to want to know, where these guys are going to go. And until we get that answered, I don't think anyone's going to really rest easy.
Well, I think, Orla, if the example of Portsmouth, which I've just covered this afternoon's ends, go by, the locals will be the last to find out wherever they're put.
Exactly.
There are 55 HMOs in Portsmouth with hundreds, at least 3 per HMO, dumped on the community. The local politician, the local council, nobody knew. They had to force it out of them with a Freedom of Information Act. So you're exactly right on that front. Could I ask you about the broader point? The judge there, in his summing up, remember last summer it was Sir Keir Starmer who accused people of being far right. if they objected to the situation in the United Kingdom post Southport and those terrible murders. Today, the judge seemed to imply that part of his ruling was influenced by the fact there could be violence outside hotels if they weren't closed. Once again, little whiff of victim blaming onto the residents of Epping there.
Do you know what? You can't win. You can't win either way. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So for us as residents, you know, yes, there has been, and everybody refers to that first Thursday night in Epping where there was trouble. And yes, it was awful. And nobody wants trouble. Nobody wants there to be trouble in the towns. Nobody wants to see violence. Of course they don't. And since that evening, every protest twice a week has been peaceful, it's been harmonious, the people have come together in Epping, and we have just said over and over again, we cannot have these men in this hotel where week in, week out, there's incidents reported of abuse, of sexual assault, of stealing, of various different things, when the hotel is surrounded by 4 schools. Parents have been absolutely terrified that in 2 weeks their children are going back to school, and there has been no, you know, up until this point, there has been no movement or any communication about whether or not the hotel was going to be closed or what the situation was going to be. So on the violence point and on the far right, you know, the name calling, it's absolutely insane that good people in local residents outside these hotels up and down the country are being given such awful names: far right, Nazis, fascists, all these awful names. They're just people, Martin. People who want to feel safe in their communities, who want their children to be safe, who don't want these men loitering around at night. You know, there is no, you know, it's 9-10 o'clock at night and they're all outside, coming back from Tesco, drunk, buying drugs outside the hotels. You know, it's just created this awful environment locally. And then for the parents and the concerned relatives and concerned brothers and sisters to be labelled with such derogatory terms is so unfair. Why are we being the ones? Sorry, carry on.
Orla, I'd like to interject because we obviously have seen a lot of outside protesters, many feel shipped in, stand up to racism, the refugees welcome type, socialist worker and the like. We saw scenes in Epping, which I think shocked the nation, about how they were walked in and escorted out. Those people won't go away anytime soon, will they? They may well look upon today's verdict at the High Court as a victory for racists, as a victory for fascists, all the terms that they call you, which I can clearly tell, you know, moves you, you know, very, very much indeed. Yeah. Do you think we're not solving this problem by moving it around the country, are we? This won't go away. And I say to many, many people that come on the show, you know, be careful what you wish for, because if a hotel is closed down, where on earth may these individuals be put next?
Exactly. And to your point with Portsmouth, what concerns me is the cloak and dagger approach of the government, the fact that there is no transparency, the fact that we are demonised as locals and residents. And as I said earlier, the government has no plan. There is no strategy. Their borders are still open. So more and more people are coming in day after day. They're saying, oh, we're going to close the hotels down. But where are these men going to go? And the point is, they are mainly men. So it's not families. It's not women and children. It is men who come from alien cultures. We have no idea about their background, and they're being plonked in the middle of communities, and we're expected just to get on with that and say, oh, okay, that's fine, when week after week we're hearing more and more stories about sexual assaults, you know, all sorts of things.
Orla,
you know,
could I interject, because I have to get to my next guest, but I really want to ask you this question. Today will be seen by some as a victory. I'm sensing from your tone, from your readiness to talk so vocally, the Epping protest group aren't going anywhere. This isn't the end. You're going to be watching very, very closely about the next steps from the Home Office and the government.
Absolutely. We want to know where these men are going in 14 days. If they're going to leave the hotel, are they going to be moved to somewhere else in Epping? Are they going to be moved to Canary Wharf? Portsmouth? Are they going to be moved to Barbican so they become someone else's problem in another village? The government has to realise that you cannot move this problem from pillar to post and expect the community and the UK to just suck it up. It's not going to happen. And unless it's dealt with and unless there is a strategy moving forward, the people of the UK are going to get angrier and angrier. And that's not going to change anytime soon.
OK, Orla Minnie-Hayne, thank you very much for joining us on GB News and reacting in real time to that hugely dramatic court ruling there at the High Court. The Bell Hotel in Epping being closed in 14 days. Thank you very much, Orla. Absolute pleasure. Now, let's get back now to the High Court and speak with GB News' Homeland Security editor, Mark White. Mark, we're just speaking to a resident there saying, as far as they're concerned, the battle very much is just beginning. But tell us, what's the latest?
Well, another breaking line from the High Court. The judge, Mr. Justice Erie, has denied Somani Hotels, the owners of the Bell Hotel, leave to appeal his decision to hand down this temporary injunction to Epping Forest District Council. So that will be another moment of relief and will be welcomed, I'm sure, by local residents and by the District Council. So the judge denying Somani Hotels the leave to appeal on this particular issue. And we've also had a strong statement through from the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, which I'll just read to you. He says, "This ruling is a moment of relief for the people of Epping. Residents," he said, "should never have had to fight their own government just to feel safe in their own town. Local residents have every right to feel safe in their own streets and every right to object when their community is treated as a dumping ground." He goes on to say this whole episode is the direct result of Labour's decision to throw open Britain's borders and tear up the deterrents the Conservatives put in place. The Conservatives will remove all illegal arrivals immediately, he says, and put a proper deterrent in place so that towns like Epping are never put in this position again. I will say that Epping, in terms of the Bell Hotel, it was the Conservatives that opened this hotel up to asylum asylum accommodation. The Conservatives did that, and the Conservatives also had another 400 plus hotels thrown open to asylum seekers right across the country. So I'm sure there are many people out there who feel it maybe is just a bit rich for Chris Philp, Robert Jenrick and others to come out as vehemently opposed to the hotels that they put in place in the first place. However, I will say, from their point of view, they say that was then, now is now. They would not have asylum seekers hotels being used for asylum seekers. Nor would they have them dispersed into the local economy or into local communities, I should say. What they want to do is embark on the type of deterrent scheme they were going to with Rwanda. When they cross the channel, get them removed from the UK as quickly as possible.
Mark White, the funny thing about politics is that hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it? Its vision is always perfect. Chris Philp, Robert Jenrick saying, "Oh, we wouldn't do this now," but you did it then. And I've spoken with people in Epping, I've spoken with people across the land who are appalled at their communities being used as dumping grounds for asylum seekers in hotels, in HMOs. These were policies that began under the Conservative government. You're exactly right to point that out. Now, of course, situation may have exacerbated, situation may feel out of control, but it does feel a bit cheap to be throwing political mud pies at the Labour Party when a lot of people might be saying a plague on all of your houses, the entire political establishment. Refugees welcome Green Party, the Liberal Democrats. Every single one of them has got the fingerprints on this crime scene, Mark White. So they should wind their necks in a bit, I think, and save that for another time. Back to today. I just spoke with a very concerned local who was saying this only feels like a very brief respite a brief victory. Where will they put these individuals next? Could they be in an HMO next to a school? We don't know. They're simply still saying the government's lost control.
Yeah, and I think there will be many people right across the country, Martin, who would rather that politicians, rather than fighting like cats and sacks over this particular issue, perhaps put their heads together and decide on an important point of principle, perhaps that these migrants, having broken into the country, having gained the asylum system to then go on and claim asylum, should not then be housed in four-star hotels or into dispersal accommodation in the heart of communities. Perhaps these politicians should come together, many people will think, and work towards a solution that maybe involves housing them outside of communities in purpose-built or specially adapted mass immigration camps where the conditions are austere, where being in those camps while you await your asylum decision is in itself the kind of deterrent that will act as something that stops perhaps as many people coming across the channel, in the same way as, of course, the asylum seeker four-star hotels act as a pull factor.
So, Mark White, I guess for the citizens of Epping and indeed nationwide, because Mark White, this will surely now send ripples across the entire nation. Social media is lighting up as we speak like a Christmas tree, from groups all around, from the north of Scotland, Wales, all over the country are saying, wow, if they can do this in Epping, we can do it in our area next. And sure as night follows day, Mark, also stand up to racism, socialist worker, they'll all be saying this is the victory for the racists, for the far right. They'll be concerned. Mark White, I can't see this solving the problem whatsoever. The same problem will still exist with the same people on opposing sides.
Well, I was struck with what your last guest, someone from the heart of that community in Epping, said. Yes, of course, there were unsavoury elements in that protest that turned into violence, in part, I think, aided by incompetent police management down in Epping, where police not having the proper resources to be able to keep both sides apart still decided to march this group of self-styled anti-racist protesters right to the heart of where that other protest was taking place outside the hotel. Apart from that incident that itself clearly did turn violent, and one or two scuffles since, really, for the most part, outside this hotel, it has been impeccably attended by mothers and people in the community who are very concerned, who want to get the message across that they're not about violent protest, that what they're about is trying to ensure that their communities are safe, and they don't want individuals foisted upon them who may be of dubious background, who could pose a potential threat to those communities. And that's a message that I think is being now taken up by other communities around the country, because we're seeing this pink protest where mothers are turning up dressed in pink is being used as a model now in other locations where people realise that actually the peaceful message is the more powerful message. They just need, obviously, the politicians to listen to them. And this goes, I think they will feel, certainly a step towards that, knowing that people power can achieve some kind of a result here in the royal courts of justice that can get them some respite, that perhaps can make the politicians start to think twice.
Mark White, impeccably put. I think you're exactly right. I think the genie is out of the bottle now. This is too big to simply go away. The residents are so savvy, they won't be fobbed off with a hotel being closed down. As the end of this, they know this could be a problem moved Not a problem solved. Mark White, a day of high drama. Once again, superb reporting. The best in the business, Mark White. Thank you very much. We'll be sure to come back to you throughout the rest of the show for more updates. What a day in British politics. Let's get some reaction now by the political correspondent at the Financial Times, Anna Gross. Anna, welcome to the programme. Always a pleasure to have your esteemed company. A day of high drama. What's your take? Is this a victory for residents, or is it simply a problem being shoved around the country somewhere else?
I mean, I think it's a victory for those residents who were very concerned about the asylum seekers being moved there. The Home Office always said that they were going to be moved there on a temporary basis, but a lot of people in the local area, from across the political spectrum actually, it wasn't just far-right protesters, were very concerned about asylum seekers being home there, even housed there. They were concerned that it wasn't going to be temporary. These things can often run on, and I think a lot of them will feel pleased that they kind of managed to prevent that happening. Obviously, this doesn't solve the wider problem that so many asylum seekers do continue to be housed in hotels. And Labour came into government, I think, genuinely believing it would be able to quite rapidly end the use of asylum hotels. They thought it can't be that difficult. The Tories are probably just quite incompetent on this issue, and they've got in and actually found it's incredibly difficult. There are very large numbers of people continuing to come across the channel, and there simply isn't the available government-owned infrastructure and housing to put them in.
Anna Gross, I was in Sunderland the other week, and communities there were telling me that on their streets, HMOs are being taken over. Some have been used as marijuana factories, houses are being burned down, communities forever changed, streets feeling unsafe. And I wonder if so much has happened now in this past year. We had the Prime Minister calling people far right in places like Epping after Southport, and yet now something seems to have changed. We had the Women's Safety Initiative on the show yesterday with an astonishing report saying 90% of the public now support the deportation of foreign rapists. Half of people in the country feel that women's safety is being compromised by what's going on. Do you think now this has moved on? You can't call these people fascists and racists anymore. It's gone into the realms of safety and concerned citizens and protecting women and children.
Well, look, I don't think there are many people nowadays who are calling protesters or people who disagree with asylum seeking hotels in their community fascists and far-right agitators. Certainly not the Labour government, who has, I think, been at pains to sort of say we understand the concerns of the people, we understand the concerns of local communities. I think one of the issues at the moment is that this issue has become so politicised and people are so angry about it. And I believe it has also been kind of stoked up by a lot of by politicians, both kind of conservative and some reform politicians as well, who are sort of saying, everyone has a right to be very angry about this. And I think that for the time being, at least, there are thousands of asylum seekers who are in the UK. And that a place does need to be found to house those people. And I think it's very understandable that people don't want them housed in hotels in the centre of their communities. But there seems to have been a kind of more widespread backlash against the housing of asylum seekers pretty much anywhere. And there's this wider movement against asylum seekers being housed in HMOs. And that's not to say there aren't kind of localised problems in many places that some asylum seekers are sent, but there are also places where asylum seekers can live very comfortably and very safely.
Yeah, but Anna, if I may interject, here's what I hear all the time from hundreds and hundreds of people I speak to in working class towns across Britain, and it's this: the political class have no idea what it's like to live in an impoverished area where you have to wait 13, 14 plus months for a social house. They have no idea how hard it is to get an NHS appointment for the GP, for the dentist, and they see a political class who they believe are completely and utterly not only out of touch, but in a different galaxy, let alone a different planet. They won't ever live on Sir Keir Starmer Street. They won't live on the same street as people work at the Home Office. This is a liberal fantasy that's becoming a working class nightmare. That's what they tell me every single time. Why can't our political class get that?
I think that political class, and I think, well, I don't want to speak for the political class in general, but I think there is an increasing understanding and appreciation of people's concerns. And I think there has been a disproportionate number of asylum seekers sent to more deprived areas of the country.
Yeah, because the housing's cheap and they're hollowed out. This is the point. They're dumped on them with no say.
However, just if I may just finish my point there, there are asylum-seeking hotels in areas where, as you'd call them, the political class live. I mean, there's an asylum hotel that's just around the corner from me in South London. There are actually several. There are asylum-seeking hotels in impoverished communities in London as well as in other parts of London. I mean, we're hearing the ones that we're hearing about today, or in more recent weeks, where some of the protests have been are in kind of richer parts of the country. So it is not something that is kind of siloed just to impoverished areas. And I do genuinely believe that there are places where asylum-seeking hotels and asylum-seeking kind of groups, asylum seekers, can live kind of harmoniously amongst the wider population. And it is a problem of the availability of public services around those areas. And it's not always the fault of the asylum seekers themselves.
No, I think actually a great many reasonable people don't think it's the asylum seekers at all. It's a total inability, a reluctance or an impotence or an ideological resistance to doing anything about it from the political class. And dare I say, a lot of the media class as well, who seem to think anybody who opposes this still, despite what you say, I do think a lot of people in the mainstream media think people like those in Epping are racist. I do. I think that the protesters going there still today are shouting fascist scum off our streets to mothers, to daughters and grands. I do think we live in a polarised time. And I hear you. I've got an asylum hotel very near to where I live, but I live in a very densely populated part of London where they can be readily absorbed. It's completely different from somewhere like Sunderland or Rotherham or Huddersfield or Wigan or Skegness. I could go on until 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I just would say that I think you're right that there are some people, there are some groups, and you know, you mentioned some of the kind of anti-protest campaigners that would probably call everyone there a racist or, you know, part of the far right. But I would say that Labour and senior Labour politicians, you won't hear them saying anything like that nowadays. No,
but
very much say that we kind of understand the concerns of these people, and we understand that this is that this is a really, you know, a live and understandable kind of concern people have, particularly because of the availability of public services in these areas. Yeah,
but then a great deal of Labour MPs still sign letters from Stand Up to Racism, and they're still affiliated with the same unions, such as Unite and Gross. We have to leave it there. I'm being told we have to move on. I sincerely appreciate your time on the show today. I really do. Thank you very much. Now, plenty more reaction to that huge victory for the people of Epping next. Don't go anywhere.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's quite a grey day for many today. Tomorrow starts off pretty dry, but it should turn sunnier. Again, not a lot of rain in the forecast. Slightly cooler feel tomorrow as well as this cold front sinks south. We've got this weather front across the southwest. That's been providing some heavy showers over Devon and Cornwall. Still a few of those moving through during this evening. The old rumble of thunder isn't completely out of the question, but they do tend to fade away during this evening, disappearing by midnight, maybe affecting the Channel Islands. Bit of drizzle, perhaps at times in some central and eastern parts of England, but most places dry. Quite a lot of cloud, keeping the temperatures up again in the south, but clearer skies are arriving across Scotland, allowing temperatures to dip down well into single figures in the countryside, but also allowing plenty of sunshine here for Wednesday. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be another fairly grey start, perhaps some breaks in the cloud across the south coast of both England and Wales. Northern Ireland and Scotland should have a brighter day than today. I know we've seen quite a bit of sunshine on the west coast of Scotland, but generally across the mainland of Scotland, we'll see the cloud breaking up through the morning to reveal some sunnier skies here during tomorrow. tomorrow. And I'm pretty optimistic across England and Wales too, that cloud will tend to break up through the morning. So by lunchtime, many places seeing lengthy spells of sunshine. May take a little longer in southernmost counties of England for that cloud to break, and still the possibility of some cloud at times affecting the east coast. But generally it turns sunny through tomorrow. Temperatures about average for the time of year, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23 or 24 in the south. Feeling cooler on the east coast, but generally you'll notice that cooler feel more particularly in the evening as temperatures fall away under what will be largely clear skies. The dry weather likely to continue for most of us into the weekend with a mixture of sunshine and cloud. Cooler mornings, but generally temperatures by day into the 20s.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Expect slow traffic on the A898 southbound at Erskine Bridge due to a broken down vehicle. Motorists should approach cautiously and allow extra travel time. Roadworks delay the A4042 northbound between Pontypool and Court Farm roundabouts. Detours are advised. In Kingston upon Hull, the A63 eastbound between the A1166 and A1079 is congested. In Northamptonshire, a broken down vehicle closes one lane on the A14 westbound between junctions 3 Rothwell and 2 Kelmarsh. And on the trains, major disruptions are on the Stansted Express between Cheshunt and Stansted Airport. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. Time's 4:36 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Well, let's now listen from. We can hear from the Epping Council leader following their High Court victory. Let's take a listen.
It's about the residents, it's about the businesses in Epping Forest, and it's about making sure that we get treated fairly by this government.
And were you heartened by the fact that the judge wouldn't allow an appeal?
The beginning and not just the end.
This is the beginning of a process, and we have to make sure that we win the process. And I want to make sure that the bell doesn't get used in the future.
And you had a message for people in Epping about not to protest. Can you kind of amplify?
Yeah,
that?
it's not so much. It's to demonstrate peacefully. This is not the end of the situation. We need to make sure that people stay calm, and if they're going to demonstrate peacefully. The first 2 weeks of this process were absolute hell for the town. You know, we saw the requirement of police on our streets on a regular basis, riot police. It was awful. I don't want to see my town go that way. I love Epping. I was born there. I love the town. It's a great place to be. I don't want to see that sort of demonstration.
And are you concerned that we might now be looking at migrants being accommodated elsewhere in your council area?
Well, obviously this is something that the government needs to address. In Epping Forest, if we're approached, and we will talk, but we, you know, at the end of the day, they've looked at hotels, and we've got 2 hotels in close proximity in Epping Forest, and the Bell Hotel and the Phoenix are not right for that use.
And what's your message to other councils who might be grappling with this problem?
Well, obviously they need to look at their own planning rules, because that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. This is a breach of planning, and that's why we've been given the judgment today. And I would suggest that other councils will look at their own planning rules.
But clearly the Home Office feel that this is something that will have widespread ramifications, that you are a bit of a test case.
Yeah, we may be a bit of a test case. I have to say I've been extremely disappointed in the Home Office from day one. They didn't listen, they didn't consult, they instructed, didn't consult, and therefore that's why they find themselves with this problem today. They need to address the issue at the borders, obviously, and obviously our country's always been a fair country. We've always welcomed legitimate asylum seekers, but this is wrong. What's going on is currently wrong, and the government needs to get a grip.
You're disheartened by the latest last-minute intervention, just as the judge was about to hand down his ruling.
Well, yes, very disappointed by that. But I have to say to you, that's been the Home Office all along through this problem. You know, they've always been late to any discussions. They've never wanted to discuss the problem with us. When we spoke to them the day after the incident occurred in Epping Forest, they didn't really want to address it at all. The only answer the Home Office has got has been, we will continue to use hotels up to the end of this Parliament. That's 4 years away.
Are asylum seekers still welcome in
Well, Epping is a welcoming community. There's a lot to be said about Epping. It's a great place to be in. It's a diverse community, and we always integrate well.
And of course we had that incident of significant violence on that Thursday, but actually since then you've had many people in the community, lots of mothers very concerned about the safety of their own children coming out. Presumably you've been heartened by the way in which protests recently seem to have turned a corner. They are much more peaceful.
Yeah, they have become much more peaceful, and I'm really pleased about that. I've deliberately not gone on to the protest because obviously I'm the leader of Epping Forest District Council. I've taken a balanced approach, and with my brilliant team I've worked with them to try and find a solution to the problem. That's what you should be doing as a leader. That's leadership. The reason I didn't go on the demonstrations or protests, whichever way you want to look at it, was in some cases the people who were attending them. Let's just leave it there. You know, I think in the early parts of the demonstrations there was an awful lot of extremists from both sides of the equation.
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations today.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Well, that was Chris Whitbread there. That was the leader of Epping Council, just frank and forthright, saying been very disappointed with the Home Office since the beginning. A quick update of just joining us on GB News. A day of high drama at the High Court. Epping Area Council has won a dramatic right to block the Bell Hotel, the asylum seeker hotel in Epping. 14 days notice, in fact, has been served to evict asylum seekers from that hotel. Of course, been the scene of many protests for many, many months now. And yeah, that's a dramatic ruling. Now, I just spoke with a local resident, Orla Minihane, a short while ago, and the reaction was very, very clear. This is a temporary victory, but it's not a problem solved. It's a problem moved. There's a huge feeling, a social media reaction is the same. Hundreds and hundreds of you watching the show are getting in touch saying this won't stop the boats. It won't smash the gangs. Let's get straight back now to Mark White at the Royal Courts of Justice. Mark, what's the very latest?
Well, we've had a statement through from Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, who has responded to this very significant decision handed down by the High Court today. In it, Nigel Farage says this is a victory for the parents and concerned residents of Epping. They do not want their young women being assaulted on the streets. This community stood up bravely despite being slandered as far right and have won. They represent the vast majority of decent people in this country. And Mr Farage goes on to say young undocumented males who break into the UK illegally should not be free to walk the streets anywhere. They must be detained and deported. I hope, he concludes, that Epping provides inspiration to others across the country. We were talking about that earlier, Martin, weren't we, that this could really be a blueprint that many communities will want to follow now. A blueprint that shows that actually peaceful protest is the way forward, that mothers and concerned residents, rather than any hotheads, turning up at a protest are the way to get the voices heard in a much more powerful way, and a way, of course, that completely kicks the legs from under self-styled anti-racist groups who show up at these events and really just want to raise the temperature by shouting lots of unacceptable slurs at people from the local community concerned about what is happening in their local communities. We heard, I was interviewing there, the local council leader, Chris Whitbread, who is very, very pleased, he says, with the way in which people within the local community have really responded, apart from, you know, that incident on that Thursday that we all know about, that was very, very unfortunate in the way that things turned out. Since then, he said he's been very heartened by the way that what we're seeing is community protest from people who are responsible, from people who really are concerned about what is happening in their communities with these migrants just foisted upon them without no real say themselves into where these migrants are going in their communities. And that was the council's point right from the very start, Martin, that they said it just was not appropriate. This hotel was not in an appropriate location to house asylum seekers.
Okay, Mark White, thank you once again for the very latest there from the High Court, a day of high drama, and no doubt we'll cross back to you for more. Mark White, the very best in the business. We'll speak to you again soon. Well, let's get the reaction now of my latest guest, and that is the human rights lawyer, Shahab Khan. Shahab, welcome to the show. So today, a seismic, a significant victory for the residents of Epping, a terrible day for the Home Office, a terrible day for the owners of the Bell Hotels, Somani Hotels Limited, who've been given no right to appeal. And dare I say it, Mr. Khan, a terrible day for human rights lawyers like yourself.
I'm not quite sure why, because it seems in the end, obviously, you know, the court made a decision, so I'm not sure why it's a terrible day for human rights. One would assume the judge considered human rights, considered the law, and made the proper decision. I think what it does show, particularly to certain groups, certain individuals, you know, parts of the media and politicians, that the government doesn't always get it right. And I think, you know, that's almost should be really be a truism, really. Everyone should agree with that. But then usually they don't. And it's like, you know, you end up attacking the judges for interfering. But that's the thing. There are always situations where the government isn't listening to the people. It's not making the right decision. And the court has to step in. And particularly interim injunctions, you know, in the past year or two, we've really had them sort of demonized and vilified and criticized, you know, how dare judges grant injunctions that interfere with government decisions. But here we got an interim injunction. And obviously the judge considered everything and came to his judgment.
Yeah, and it seems to be perhaps a tipping point where, let's face it, we've been contacted at GB News this afternoon by hundreds and hundreds of people all across the land, and they're saying they're fed up of being told that the British people can't have the rights to deport foreign criminals. They're fed up of our borders being completely open to unvetted, mostly 87% men. They're sick of their country being a dumping ground, and yet there's still the law. Do you think human rights lawyers might come in now and swoop in and say that these individuals have been poorly treated by, and perhaps they don't like the chicken nuggets somewhere else?
And it depends on how they're going to be treated. We don't know what's going to happen. So obviously the government has whatever, some are saying 14 days, some are saying 28 days. So whatever the time limit the judge has set, depends, you know, obviously, I mean, I'm assuming one hopes that, you know, the Home Office isn't just going to throw them out on the streets. But obviously, if they're going to be mistreated somehow or made homeless or otherwise abused in any way, then of course, you know, lawyers, and not just lawyers, they themselves have to stand up. But the point is, I mean, I'm not too sure, even for those who are celebrating this victory, you know, how effective it's going to be or what this means. Because the point is, obviously, somewhere, you know, in some council, in some city, in some town in this country, this is where these people are going to be housed. So if not hotels, which, to be honest, yes, I've always opposed that. Lots of us, I think almost universally, that was criticized when the Tories suddenly started using hotels to house asylum seekers. But obviously that just shows a failing government. That just shows they have no idea of how many people there are in the country, how to accommodate them, and obviously just spending millions and millions of pounds of our money on hotels. So obviously that was an awful idea from the start. But the point is, you know, where are these people? Can I interrupt your flow and put this point to you? And it's the genie is out of the bottle now. I think you're right. The local residents I've spoken to, they're not thinking today is a victory. It's not a problem solved. They see it as a problem moved. It could be moved into an HMO on the same street. We have no idea. And isn't this a reality check now, a wake-up call for the government? You can't pull the wool over people's eyes anymore. You can't give us smoke and mirrors. People are awake to this. The protest movement, peaceful protests, women, children, they can't be called far-right or fascist or Nazis anymore. Everything's changed. The government are completely and utterly out of tune with the mood of the British public. Well, not for the first time. I mean, if you're talking about smoke and mirrors and deceiving the public, misleading, that's what we had at least for the past 15 years, probably for decades. That's all we ever have from the government, whoever's in the Home Office. Like we saw today, you know, utter shambles at the Home Office. The case has been going on for weeks, if not months. The government has known for it for ages. Suddenly, at the last day, when the judge is about to deliver, oh, by the way, can we present our arguments? Can we be part of the case? But that's what the Home Office does every single time, whether on individual asylum cases or when it's sort of a more group action like this. So of course, you're right. But but that's the thing. The point is, do we really trust the government now that this one hotel, possibly other hotels, can't be used to house these very, very vulnerable people? Where are these people going to go? And that's the thing as well. I mean, I'm just thinking about the community, the people who have been protesting.
Well, the locals are vulnerable too.
You just mentioned HMOs.
The locals are vulnerable too. The women, the children, the grandmothers, they're vulnerable too. You always talk about the asylum seekers being vulnerable. What about the people who are terrified of rising crime and all these alleged rapes? They're vulnerable too.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, how is the use of hotels the problem there? The problem is these people are criminals. Someone's going to be they're committing crime because they're in a hotel. In an HMO, they won't be. I mean, I just don't see what the difference is. But the point is, potentially we even end up, people literally in foreigners or asylum seekers in prisons, and people say, well, why are we wasting taxpayers' money with them in prisons? So the point is, certain people are never going to be happy unless they're, I mean, obviously, having said that, obviously, Suella Braverman, as Home Secretary, even suggested, shall we put them in tents on the street? So I don't know what's going to please many of these people.
Okay, Shab Khan, I'm being told we have to move on. I'd love to talk to you until midnight, but I'm afraid we have to call time and get to my next guest. I'm joined by the security analyst, Henry Bolton. Henry, you've been waiting patiently there. Shoaib Khan is a lawyer. He gets paid to talk. Over to you. Is this a problem solved or a problem moved?
Both, to an extent. Sorry to be a bit vague like that. Look, the simple fact is he's right. These people have got to go somewhere. Now, what I've advocated for now since 2014, and indeed, I'm also spokesman for the SDP on this. The SDP's policy for years has been that every single person entering this country illegally should be detained securely until such time as either we can remove them or they ask to go back to whence they came. Now, that's the solution here, because one of the problems we've got, Martin, is that there's been a lot of protests, a lot of demands from political parties, politicians, members of the public, quite rightly, that hotels are not an appropriate place to put these people. But the result has inevitably been that at some point, the government would at least pay lip service to that, try and appease that popular opinion and try and close hotels. So they've been moving people out of hotels into the community, into rented accommodation, into affordable accommodation that councils have brought up in various places. We've now got these cities and boroughs of sanctuary, which are party to all of this, that Charlotte Gill's done an excellent job in exposing. But ultimately, that just deepens the problem. It gets it further. So yes, close the hotels, but no, don't put them in the community. So you've got to have another alternative. The only alternative is secure detention, as I say. Now, that is the problem here. The government has absolutely no plan. You're talking about a Home Office, Martin, that can't even get its act together to be able to appeal this case until the very, very last moment. Now, back in 2023, as I understand it, the Home Office only responded to, you'll be aware that there have been numerous appeals by asylum seekers and illegal migrants against deportation, against removal. Now, only in 21% of those appeals, the Home Office never even turned up to argue their case in the appeal, which means by default, the appeal is granted, the individual stays and doesn't get deported. The Home Office has been a circus when it comes to the legal side of things. I suspect that's down to resources, not to intention to be negligent. But nonetheless, the effect on the British public and on the system is precisely the same. It's this, what you see. Very briefly, Martin.
Henry, I'm afraid we've got 20 seconds left. We have to leave it there. I'll have to get you on for longer next time. Sorry, Shoaib Khan simply wouldn't stop talking. Thank you very much. Henry Bolton, always a pleasure. Plenty more reaction coming up to that significant, huge victory in Epping. Next, don't go anywhere. The Bell Hotel in Epping has been closed in a dramatic moment at the High Court. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's quite a grey day for many today. Tomorrow starts off pretty drab, but it should turn sunnier. Again, not a lot of rain in the forecast. Slightly cooler feel tomorrow as well as this cold front sinks south. We've got this weather front across the southwest. That's been providing some heavy showers over Devon and Cornwall. Still a few of those moving through during this evening. The odd rumble of thunder isn't completely out of the question, but they do tend to fade away during this evening, disappearing by midnight, maybe affecting the Channel Isles. Bit of drizzle, perhaps at times in some central and eastern parts of England, but most places dry. Quite a lot of cloud, keeping the temperatures up again in the south, but clearer skies are arriving across Scotland, allowing temperatures to dip down well into single figures in the countryside, but also allowing plenty of sunshine here for Wednesday. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be another fairly grey start, perhaps some breaks in the cloud across the south coast of both England and Wales. Northern Ireland and Scotland should have a brighter day than today. I know we've seen quite a bit of sunshine on the west coast of Scotland, but generally across the mainland of Scotland we'll see the cloud breaking up through the morning to reveal some sunnier skies here during tomorrow. And I'm pretty optimistic across England and Wales too, that cloud will tend to break up through the morning. So by lunchtime, many places seeing lengthy spells of sunshine. May take a little longer in southernmost counties of England for that cloud to break, and still the possibility of some cloud at times affecting the east coast. But generally it turns sunny through tomorrow. Temperatures about average for the time of year, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23 or 24 in the south. Feeling cooler on the east coast, but generally you'll notice that cooler feel more particularly in the evening as temperatures fall away under what will be largely clear skies. The dry weather likely to continue for most of us into the weekend with a mixture of sunshine and cloud. Cooler mornings, but generally temperatures by day into the 20s.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A420 and M westbound are restricted between Streighton Junction and Lothian-Burn due to a broken vehicle. Drivers should proceed cautiously and allow extra time. In Pontypool, the A4042 northbound is closed for maintenance from Pontypool roundabout to Court Farm roundabout, with diversions. Expect lengthy delays on the M25 clockwise between Junction 29 and Junction 1A in Thurrock due to heavy congestion, causing 50-minute delays. And on the trains, the Stansted Express and Chiltern Railways face disruption between Cheshunt and Stansted Airport, and from Stratford-upon-Avon to Lymington Spa. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness.
You've won £54,321.
Please don't joke. This would change my life.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GB News.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say.
How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, Epping Forest District Council has been granted a temporary dramatic High Court injunction blocking asylum seekers from being housed at the Bell Hotel in the constituency. And throughout the show, we'll have all the latest reaction to this huge victory for the residents of Epping and what that could be the next move for the future of migrant hotels across the entire United Kingdom. Well, the show, pleasure to have your company. A huge victory for the residents of Epping. The hotel there will be closed down in 14 days, we understand. Asylum seekers ordered to leave. No right of appeal for the hotel owners. The Home Office, no way of stopping this. A fait accompli, we understand. But we've been speaking to people in the area. Is this really a problem solved? Or is it a problem moved? Where will the asylum seekers be put next? Could it be into HMOs in the borough or elsewhere across the land, in communities that never had a say, never had a veto, never had a voice? Will this really be the end of it? Well, it's certain to spark, I think, a fresh wave of people saying enough is enough in their area at asylum hotels. A huge moment in politics at the High Court today. Our man Mark White has been there. We'll have all the political reaction throughout the whole spectrum. The rest of the show, get in touch usual ways. GBNews.com/your say is the way to do so. But on a dramatic day in British politics, it's time for your headlines. And here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and a very good evening to you. Just after 5 o'clock. Well, in other news tonight, Sir Keir Starmer has co-chaired a high-level meeting on security guarantees for Ukraine as Donald Trump is ruling out sending US troops on the ground if a peace deal is reached. Instead, the president suggested the US could help by air, warning that Vladimir Putin would face a rough situation if he refuses to cooperate in the peace process. It comes as reports suggest Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky have agreed to a one-on-one meeting within the next 2 weeks, with Switzerland signalling it's ready to host. After yesterday's Oval Office talks, Zelensky called the discussions significant and said Ukraine is already working on concrete guarantees.
After this productive meeting with the President and then with all our colleagues, with the partners, we confirmed that we are ready for trilateral meeting, and if Russia proposed to President of the United States bilateral, and then we will see the result of bilateral, and then it can be the trilateral. So I said always, so Ukraine will never stop on the way to peace, and we are ready for any kind of format, but on the level of leaders.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer says the so-called coalition of the willing has made real progress and will continue talks with Washington in the days ahead.
Today's meeting was good and constructive, and there was a real sense of unity between the European leaders that were there and President Trump and President Zelensky. These were the two outcomes that were the most important coming out of today. They're positive outcomes. There was real sense of unity. We've made real progress today.
But leader of the Lib Dems, Ed Davey, told GB News the UK needs to increase its support to Ukraine.
Still fear that Trump is driven by a desire to get a deal with President Putin and is putting that above the long-term interests of Ukraine and of European security. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's a deal that Ukraine would willingly sign up to. I think the best response that Britain could make would be to strengthen the hand of Zelensky at negotiations by offering to increase our support for Ukraine, for example, with British Typhoon jet fighters. I think we have to make sure that Ukraine goes into those negotiations in the strongest possible way.
Saret Davy there speaking to us earlier. Well, a woman nicknamed the Ketamine Queen is set to plead guilty over the overdose death of Friends star Matthew Perry. 42-year-old Jasveen Sangha has agreed to admit 5 charges in Los Angeles, including distributing ketamine, resulting in death. That's according to the US Justice Department. Perry was found dead in a jacuzzi in his LA home in October 2023. A coroner ruled his death was caused by the acute effects of the drug. Sangha is one of 5 people, including Perry's doctor and own assistant, accused of exploiting his addiction for profit and supplying the drugs that led to his death. Here, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves is weighing up a major shake-up of property tax. She's considering a new levy on homes worth more than £500,000, which could replace stamp duty on owner-occupied properties. The move comes as the Treasury is exploring fresh ways to raise revenue while still keeping Labour's pledge to protect the state pension triple lock. And drivers are being warned of major delays this bank holiday weekend, with 17.6 million getaway trips expected across the UK. The RAC says the southeast and southwest will see the worst congestion, urging motorists to set off early or, they say, be prepared to spend longer in traffic. Friday is set to be the busiest, with 3 million journeys rising to 3.4 on Saturday, another 2.4 million forecast on Sunday, and then 2.7 million on Monday. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you very shortly. Next, though, let's take a look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here are those markets for you this evening. The pound will buy you $1.3524 and €1.1573. The price of gold is £2,469.15 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,184 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Only one place to start, and of course we begin with the huge breaking news that Epping Forest District Council has been granted a temporary High Court injunction blocking asylum seekers from being housed at the local Bell Hotel in Epping. And let's cross back now to the High Court and speak with GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White. Mark White, welcome back. Bringing our viewers up to speed, if you could, on what's been a hugely significant day in British politics, not just for Epping, but potentially the entire nation. Mark, bring us up to speed.
Well, I think it's difficult to overstate, actually, the significance of this ruling handed down by the High Court, this injunction granted, of course, to Epping Forest District Council, a win for them. But what it actually means is that a hotel, the Bell Hotel in Epping, that has been a real source of concern to the community in Epping, not for weeks or months, but for years, because of its use as an asylum seeker hotel, and lately, of course, because of its links to a number of very worrying incidents, criminal allegations linked to asylum seekers at that hotel. What it means for those local residents is that that Bell Hotel will no longer be used by asylum seekers. They have 14 days, the owners of that hotel, the Somani Hotel Group, to get those asylum seekers out of that hotel and housed somewhere else. So whether the hotel will be returned to the local community, it's got to be hoped that it will, and it will once again become an amenity for that local community. But I think for people in Epping, that's secondary. For them, it was about the safety of their children and people in the community. For them, it was about stopping its use, what they see as an entirely inappropriate use, as an asylum seeker hotel. And it may, Martin, prove to be a blueprint for protest groups right across the country now who see what has happened in Epping, where, yes, of course, there was that one evening of violence that was to be regretted, of course. But after that, from there on in, it was pretty much entirely peaceful protests that took place at the Bell Hotel in Epping, with predominantly worried mothers showing people around the country how peaceful protest can be so much more powerful in the message it sends than violent protest. And it clearly, in terms of the message going forward, it has been received loud and clear. It may well be a blueprint for other protest groups going forward now. That will certainly be what they hope.
Right, what's going to happen next, though, as sure as night follows day, is a game of political pass the parcel. This won't perhaps be a problem solved, it'll be a problem moved. And of course, if asylum hotels are closed, most likely outcome will be HMOs, perhaps in the same communities, perhaps in the same streets, perhaps in the neighbouring town. Today's victory, Mark White, could be short-lived. I've been speaking with locals myself. You spoke with the council leader. NIMBYs, no illegals in my backyard. That's going to be the next conversation. Where will they go? This won't smash the gangs. This won't stop the boats. It won't solve the problem.
I think there's a real worry that actually the Labour government sees the dispersal of migrants into the heart of communities as the right thing to do. They feel it's a much better option for communities than migrant hotels. Now, it's absolutely true that migrant hotels are highly controversial. No one wants to see hundreds of young males congregating outside hotels that are taken out of service for local communities, not just for weeks or months, but for years at a time, and with everything that comes with these young males wandering about aimlessly in town centres. But actually, I think an even worse option, as far as many people are concerned, are young males predominantly going to houses of multiple occupation. So a dozen young males coming to a street near you, and not just in a hotel in an area of a town that people know about, but actually right in the heart of your community, in the street next to you, maybe even in your street. And that's of great concern, I think, to people. And there is a growing impetus now, and many people calling for a change of tack in terms of the housing of these illegal migrants who come across the Channel and then claim asylum, to house them in purpose-built or specially adapted mass camps away from centres of population, where they can be closely controlled, where the conditions that they live in are more austere, and so that those camps can themselves act as a disincentive, a deterrent to come across the Channel. No longer will you be housed in four-star hotels or nice flats in a local authority area, but you'll be held in these camps. There are growing calls for that. The government thus far is not listening, but, you know, let's see where we go in the weeks and months ahead, because we're in the height of summer now. And although it's been a bit windy in the Channel this week, we're in the next few days going to enter another calm spell with many hundreds, thousands of small boat migrants coming back across the Channel from France.
Mark White, a day of high drama at the High Court. Impeccable reporting as ever. Thank you very much for bringing us all up to speed this afternoon, Mark White. Now let's get the opinion now of my next guest, and it's the former Immigration Minister, Kevin Foster. Kevin, always a pleasure to have your company. May I get your first reaction to being seen by some as a victory today for the people of Epping?
Well, it is a victory for the people of Epping and formally for their local council, who what they've done is they've looked to enforce the planning rules on the hotel. It's probably one of the times our quite restrictive planning system actually comes back to help many local communities, in that this building's designated as a hotel, not as longer-term accommodation. The idea is, like you and I, perhaps go and spend a few nights there on business or a week or two on holiday, not that we accommodate people there long term. So that's how this has happened. It follows actually, it's not dissimilar precedent that Great Yarmouth used last year, of course represented by Rupert Lowe, and Torbay Council it used a little while back. It didn't end up having to get to court to enforce on one that had been opened in a tourism area there. So, this is a victory for the local residents, but you're absolutely right to touch on, Martin. This doesn't change the overall situation that these people will then go on to be housed somewhere else. All this does is say that this particular hotel can't be used under planning rules, although I suspect Conservative and Reform controlled councils with asylum hotels would now be looking very closely at whether they could do the same.
Kevin Foster, can I ask you about your experience as Immigration Minister of dealing with the Home Office? It was an utter farce in the High Court earlier on today, an 11th minute impotent attempt to derail proceedings. The KC for the council themselves said it was highly inappropriate what they did to make out that they didn't know what was happening today. I use this phrase a lot, perhaps I'm wrong, the lunatics have taken over the asylum system, but it seems that the Home Office, they don't know that they're what's it from their elbow.
Yeah, I think it's almost beyond belief and straining credibility, the idea they didn't know about the application to the court or the planning enforcement action. You only had to Google it to find out that was going on. And given the recent protests, and I'd almost certainly have expected the local government department to be in contact with Epping Forest Council. Why wouldn't you be when this sort of thing was happening in their local area, along with the Home Office, of course, from its policing side as well as its asylum side. So a last-minute intervention. I suspect it's because they realised a precedent might be set here around the use of hotel usage as this. And of course, as I've just touched on, there'll be plenty of other councils up and down the country now looking at, well, hang on, we've got a hotel causing us problems. Can we use the same planning rule to enforce against that one?
Kevin Foster, we use the phrase woke a lot nowadays. I wonder if we should be talking about a different word, awake. I think the British public are awake now to what's going on. They can see what happened today. They know what's going to happen next. I've been speaking with locals in the area literally moments after this ruling, Orla Minihay, and she says, we know it's going to be HMOs next, and they're going to be keeping an eagle eye on that. People won't just be fobbed off anymore. They won't take it anymore of liberal politicians dumping problems on working class communities where they have no say, no veto, no voice. They're awake. And that, for the government, is a big problem.
It is a big problem for the government, because if you think about, they're looking to close down asylum hotels. I think it's something like 2/3 of asylum seekers housed in London and the South East are in hotels. So if you close them down, I think we can all, with even the most basic knowledge of the housing market in this country, work out that probably London and the South East isn't the place you're then going to be housing them. Where you're probably going to look at, if you're looking for affordable HMO accommodation, is going to be more like the Midlands and the North, particularly some of those areas of the Red Wall where, let's be honest, Labour's got some political problems already there, and this is going to emphasise those all the more. People being moved directly into communities, and actually from a policing and other perspective, harder to keep track of individuals than you can if you know where they are. They're in a hotel, you monitor them in and out. And this is going to bring back the debate about larger accommodation centres like we see in Greece. And, before people claim European human rights and what European views on it, if you go and see the one in Samos, it's got a big EU flag planted on the top of it. So that tells you what many in Europe think of those prospects. But, and I can remember from my own experience, people don't welcome those either if it's the area concerned. And one of the things I found, say people are more awake now, when we were debating those in the past, people just didn't discuss what the alternatives were at all.
Kevin, can I ask you a question which you might not like? And it's this. There's a lot of blame being laid on the Labour government today, but it was the Conservative Party who rolled out the red carpet in terms of asylum hotels, also failed to stop the boats, also failed to control immigration, both legal and illegal. You can say it's got worse, but is there a legacy problem and a responsibility the Conservatives must carry the can? And particularly the hotel in Epping, that happened on the Conservative Party's watch.
Yeah, Mark, I'm not going to sit here and say that every problem in this area started on the 5th of July last year. It wouldn't be credible to do so, and you'd rightly pick me up quite heavily on it for doing so. Where I think the Conservative Party needs to be clear on is what is the plan going forward. And, we can say numbers were coming down at the end. There were plans for Rwanda. There were plans for larger style accommodation centres, which were scrapped on the 5th of July last year. But, there's no easy answer to this. And also for reform as well. If you're going to send people back to Afghanistan, how are you going to do that? What is your deterrent? And how are you going to look, if you want to cite what Donald Trump has achieved, how would you bring the quite wide scale of action that he's taken to achieve that into the UK? Use of the military for flights, accommodation centres, action at the border, sanctions against countries which don't take returns. And, how powerful are our threats versus what, for example, the US can threaten in terms of economic and visa sanctions. So, I'm not going to sit here and claim it's all the current government's fault. All involved in politics need to look at what the solutions are here, because there's clearly public demand to deal with, including debates around issues like the ECHR and our continuing membership.
Yeah, Kevin Foster, well done for taking it on the chin. I think it's important to do that. And I think you're right. A lot of people are now realising it's a heck of a lot harder in government than it is in opposition. I don't suppose that would change either if Reform UK ever were to get into power. Long way to go, but still we have the same old Groundhog Day problem. Kevin Foster, always an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us today on GB News. Now, coming up, plenty more reaction to that huge victory for the people of Epping. Next, with me, Martin Daubney. Don't go anywhere. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 5:23 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News on an action-packed day in politics. And we return to that huge breaking news story that Epping Forest District Council has been granted a temporary High Court injunction blocking asylum seekers from being housed at the Bell Hotel in the Epping constituency. For some more reaction now, I'm joined by the political commentator Andy Williams. Andy, welcome to the show. What message does this send out to you? We, of course, have seen protesters from the local area camped there for many weeks. We've also seen outsiders shipped in, stand up to racism, given a police escort in and out. It's been a febrile atmosphere, but today the locals won. What's your take?
Well, it absolutely has been a febrile atmosphere, and that is because, partly, as you say, because far-left groups like Stand Up to Racism have gone there and created trouble. But let's be absolutely clear about this. There were troublemakers on both sides during what I think was an extremely unedifying episode. Still, nobody has explained to me why you need to take your Union Jack or your St George's flag to a peaceful protest outside a migrant hotel. Literally,
why not?
Nobody can tell me why that might be.
Why not? It's not a crime to carry a national flag. In fact, people are proud of their nation.
Absolutely not. And I think the national flag is a great symbol of pride in the appropriate context, whether that's during the Olympics or during royal occasions or other occasions.
You're saying it's not the appropriate context for mothers, daughters, grandmothers and locals to be concerned about violence in their community. You're saying that's not an appropriate situation to be waving a flag for saying people who want to defend their country?
Well, it's a free country, absolutely. But I come back to the point that if we're accepting that many of the people who were protesting are concerned parents, concerned about their communities, I genuinely don't understand what that has to do with the flag of the nation.
It's got everything to do with the flag of the nation because they want to protect their nation. And you're part of the problem, dare I say it. You singularly don't understand that these are patriots who want their country to be safe and prosperous. And if that means they want to carry a flag to a hotel to show that, it's a free country. They're entitled to do that. Why would you have a problem with that?
I'm not saying they should be banned from doing it. I'm saying I don't understand why they do, and I'm saying I find it unedifying. That's my point of view. I'm entitled to give that point of view just as much as they are to wave their flags for some reason. I don't carry my flag to work in the morning. I don't suppose you do either, Martin. I find it very odd. But that's besides the point. The real point here is that these people, these protesters, aren't going to get what they wanted, which, let's be clear, is for these people to be deported immediately. That's not going to happen. What we're going to see instead is displacement activity. So these asylum seekers clearly will have to be housed somewhere else. And I would suspect, I'd very strongly suspect, they will end up in housing rather than a hotel, and probably in the northwest or the northeast of England, or maybe Yorkshire, which is where lots of migrants who are housed rather than put in hotels are living.
Yeah. Andy Williams, on that point, I can agree with you. And this gets the very, very nub of the issue. Successive governments, not just the Labour Party, the Conservatives prior to them, have treated this precisely as that. This is an entitled liberal political establishment position of open borders, of being an endlessly giving and generous society without clamping down on what many people think is an infringement of their civil liberties, of their safeties. Some people may even call it an invasion. Strong words, I know. I think that's where we're at. And it's been communities with no say, no cohesion, with cheap housing stock, working class communities dumped upon by the political elites. That's why they're taking their flags out, because they believe in a country which is being obliterated by the political class.
But I don't understand. This is what I really genuinely can't understand. And people will say, oh, liberal metropolitan elite and all of those sorts of slurs. The reality is that when you hear words like invasion used, and when you see placards that say things like clear them out, these are inflammatory terms and inflammatory slogans. And if we're going to have a serious, inverted commas, legitimate debate about migration, we need, I think, to use temperate and appropriate language. And my issue with these protests and a lot of this debate is that has not been the case.
Do you think Queensberry rules has worked? Like, nobody advocates violence. Nobody advocates
But some
vile
people
behaviour.
do, Martin. That's the problem.
Some people do, but the vast majority of people in Epping didn't. The protests have been impeccably well behaved in these past weeks. It's been women, children, it's been pink protests. There's been no trouble whatsoever. You can't equate with what happened a year ago to what's happened in the vast majority of incidents. And I put it to you, some of the unedifying language, Nazi scum off our streets, people from outside the area being shipped in, whipping up a frenzy. Will you condemn them?
I don't agree with that either. And by the way, this is another problem I have, is that a lot of the people who were protesting outside this hotel, again, on both sides, are not from Epping. So this
the vast majority of people against that hotel are local residents. The huge majority who are saying they're in favour of it, I guarantee you, they've been shipped in from London. They're from outside the area, mate.
I think people are being shipped in from elsewhere on both sides of this debate. I do not believe that everybody who was out protesting against this hotel was from Epping. I just don't believe that that's the case. The reality is you do have a hardcore of people who are going around the country trying to make political point scoring.
Those people are from the left.
On this issue.
Those people are from the left. Stand Up to Racism is a well-funded national organisation of hardcore socialists that causes trouble all across the land. None of them were from Epping. Zero.
Martin, I don't disagree with that. My point is that there are people on the right of politics who are hijacking this issue for their own political gain. That is absolutely the case.
Do you have any proof of that happening in Epping? Because, you know, we've been covering these protests now for many, many months, and we simply haven't said that. We haven't seen it.
I've literally got, so talking about the right of politics, I have Robert Jenrick's tweet from about half an hour ago up here, and he says,
well, he's
congratulations
far right.
to the... Sorry?
Well, Robert Jenrick's far right.
No, I didn't say far right. I said from the right of politics. Hijacking
He's
the
elected
issue.
representatives. He's not a member of some shadowy far right that's travelling around the nation like you're intimating. He's an elected representative. You might not like him.
I'm not intimating that at all. I'm saying he's hijacking it for his own political gain, which I think he absolutely is. You know, and I think some of the people who've been hijacking this issue and whipping up divisive sentiment are deplorable. I'm afraid I do. And that is not to say that there aren't genuinely, legitimately concerned people who are out there protesting because they care about their community, right? I'm the one here putting a nuanced position forward. There are people doing that. There are other people. Why is Jenrick there? What's he doing? He's not even the leader of the Conservative Party. He's the Justice Secretary. He should crack on and talk about how the Tories are going to fix our broken justice system.
Yeah, Andy Williams, you make a valid point. You really do. And listen, I always really value your opinion, and I know we can have a frank exchange of views. And so if I could, I'd reach through that screen and shake your hand. Andy, I think you're a great man. Thank you for having a robust exchange with me. I really do value your opinion. Thank you very, very much indeed. Cheers. And lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including more reaction to that seismic victory for Epping from the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, who has said this whole episode is the direct result of Labour's complete loss of border control. You will not want to miss that. Plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show, but for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, firstly, stay safe. And now, here is your traffic and your travel update. And please, stick with us.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Motorists should be cautious on the A720 westbound between Streighton Junction and Lothian-Burn due to a broken-down vehicle causing delays. Roadworks have closed the A40042 northbound from Pontypool roundabout to Court Farm roundabout with diversions. In Northamptonshire, a broken-down vehicle on the A14 westbound between Junction 3 Rothwell and Junction 2 Kelmarsh is causing delays. Thurrock commuters face congestion on the M25 clockwise between Junction 29 and Junction 1A, with delays up to 50 minutes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Very good evening from the newsroom. The top stories at 5:30. Asylum seekers will be removed from the Bell Hotel in Essex after Epping Forest Council won a temporary High Court injunction. All migrants must leave by the 12th of September, despite a failed bid by the Home Office to block the case. Sir Keir Starmer has co-chaired a high-level meeting on security guarantees for Ukraine as Donald Trump rules out sending US troops on the ground. The president says the US could help by air, but warns Vladimir Putin will face a rough situation if he refuses a peace deal. A woman nicknamed the Ketamine Queen is set to plead guilty over the overdose death of Friends star Matthew Perry. Jasveen Sangha will admit 5 charges, including distributing the drug, resulting in death after Perry was found dead in LA last October. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is weighing up a major property tax shake-up, potentially a new levy on homes worth over £500,000. It will replace stamp duty on owner-occupied properties. And drivers are being warned of major delays this bank holiday weekend, with 17.6 million trips expected. The RAC says the southeast and southwest will be worst hit. On Friday, 3 million set to hit the roads, rising to 3.4 million on Saturday. Those are the headlines for now. I'll be back with the news at 6.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's quite a grey day for many today. Tomorrow starts off pretty dry, but it should turn sunnier. Again, not a lot of rain in the forecast. Slightly cooler feel tomorrow as well as this cold front sinks south. We've got this weather front across the southwest. That's been providing some heavy showers over Devon and Cornwall. Still a few of those moving through during this evening. The old rumble of thunder isn't completely out of the question, but they do tend to fade away during this evening, disappearing by midnight, maybe affecting the Channel Isles. Bit of drizzle, perhaps at times in some central and eastern parts of England, but most places dry. Quite a lot of cloud, keeping the temperatures up again in the south, but clearer skies are arriving across Scotland, allowing temperatures to dip down well into single figures in the countryside, but also allowing the grey start. Perhaps some breaks in the cloud across the south coast of both England and Wales. Northern Ireland and Scotland should have a brighter day than today. I know we've seen quite a bit of sunshine on the west coast of Scotland, but generally across the mainland of Scotland we'll see the cloud breaking up through the morning to reveal some sunnier skies here during tomorrow. And I'm pretty optimistic across England and Wales too, that cloud will tend to break up through the morning. So by lunchtime, many places seeing lengthy spells of sunshine. May take a little longer in southernmost counties of England for that cloud to break, and still the possibility of some cloud at times affecting the east coast. But generally, it turns sunny through tomorrow. Temperatures about average for the time of year, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23 or 24 in the south. Feeling cooler on the east coast, but generally, you'll notice that cooler feel, more particularly in the evening, as temperatures fall away under what will be largely clear skies. The dry weather likely to continue for most of us into the weekend with a mixture of sunshine and cloud. Cooler mornings, but generally temperatures by day into the 20s.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to our big story. The Bell Hotel in Epping has been granted a temporary High Court injunction blocking asylum seekers from being housed there. They'll all be kicked out in 14 days' time. Let's get the reaction now with the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. Chris, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. What's your reaction to today's seismic news?
Well, Martin, I welcome this news. I think it's a victory for common sense, a victory for local people who understandably did not want hundreds of young male illegal immigrants housed in the middle of their community, some of whom we now know have sexually assaulted young women and girls. So I think it's a good decision by the court for a change, and I expect other councils will now follow Epping's lead and legally challenge the hotels for illegal immigrants in their area as well.
Chris Philp, is this a problem solved or a problem moved? Locals in the area tell me they fear the next move will just be in HMOs, perhaps in the same communities.
Well, I have been picking up that the Labour government's plan to try and reduce hotel use is simply to move people out of hotels and into flats and into HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, which of course would ordinarily be used by young people who are long-term UK residents. So I'm going to be monitoring this very, very carefully, monitoring the data to see if that is a trick the Labour government are planning. But look, the real solution to this problem is to stop illegal immigrants coming here in the first place. It's to deport them immediately upon arrival, either back to their country of origin or some other safe third country if we can't remove them to their country of origin. They shouldn't be in hotels or flats in the first place. They shouldn't be here at all in the first place.
Chris, you say they shouldn't be there in the first place, particularly in Epping. It's fair to point out, is it not, that the Bell Hotel in Epping was opened by the Conservative Party?
Yeah, and we're under new leadership and we have a new approach. I don't think that hotel should be there at all. I think all people who cross the Channel illegally, and it's, by the way, it's mostly young men from France, should be immediately removed. Now, we did have a plan to do that, the Rwanda scheme, which Labour very stupidly cancelled just a few days before it was due to start, with no replacement in place. And that is why this year so far, 2025, has been the worst in history for illegal immigrants crossing the Channel. And I understand why people are angry about that. That's why we need a new approach, which is that every single person crossing the Channel illegally should be immediately deported. I was in the migrant camps in France myself just last week. Those people are in France. France is a safe country. No one is being persecuted in France. While I was there, as you probably saw, one of the illegal immigrants pulled out a machete while I was there. I got pelted with bottles. Our car got hit by missiles. Some of those people that did that last week could by now be in the UK. They could by now be in a hotel just round the corner from where any of your viewers may live. They might be committing crime in this country now. That is why this border security crisis isn't just a border security crisis, it is a public safety crisis as well.
OK, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, thanks for joining us. I know you have to dive off. You're a very busy man. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today on GB News. Now, let's have a change of pace now. A man has been waiting patiently for hours to see us. I really wanted to get this gentleman into the studio because a campaign of fighting for keeping Britain's cemeteries tidy says that the abuse he's received will not stop him from fighting on for the lost loved ones of our country. The petition has been created to provide funding to preserve and protect cemeteries around the UK. And so far, it's received over 5,000 signatures, but we need to get it to 10,000 signatures so this can be acknowledged by Parliament. It's only open for another couple of days. You know what to do. I'll post the links on my socials after the show. But for now, I'm joined by the man who started this, the creator, John Gilmore. John, it's a pleasure to have your company. May I shake your hand and thank you so much for waiting.
Pleasure to see you again.
So patiently on such a busy news day. Tell the GB News viewers why maintaining and caring for cemeteries is so important to you and how can they get involved with your petition?
Well, I lost my own father when I was 15, and I know that millions of people will have experienced loss in their lives. I remember a young colleague when I was 18 who sadly developed ovarian cancer. I can remember her walking around the canteen at lunchtime with a chemotherapy pack on her back, and she sadly passed away. And one of my employments, I also remember seeing a young girl aged 12 who had an anaphylactic shock, and she sadly passed away. So those are the stories that you just remember these people. But also, we wouldn't be here without our ancestors. But You've got in cemeteries, you have the armed forces.
Yeah.
People have worked and contributed to the country and we still live with so many of those legacies to this very day, whether it be they've built a listed building or medicine or whatever it may be, research. But cemeteries are in the heart of communities. They are so important, but for so many councils, they are not a priority. I don't understand why not. People are paying for these services. They're not free. So when the petition talks about provide more funding, it's the more of the money that councils are charging for burial plots, cremation fees, a memorial plaque. It's more of that money going back to these places because they desperately need it for their care and maintenance, rather than going into main council pots and cemeteries being run on a very tight margin, which is why you have neglect.
And John Gilmore, I know you do a huge amount of voluntary work yourself. You tend to graves, you know, not only those you know, but just because you care passionately about this issue and children's graves. I mean, whenever I go to graveyard, I look at the ages of those who are deceased. I know children's graves are really something close to your heart to take care of them. And so often cemeteries are just, you know, waist deep in weeds, completely overgrown, totally neglected. It's a part of the same problem with potholes, with graffiti. But cemeteries are especially important because if we forget the past, we forget where we come from. Tell us how people can get involved with your petition.
The petition is online. You will put the links up, obviously.
I will.
People can also type in cemetery petition online, look for Parliament, look for the words provide funding. I appeal to your wonderful viewers with all my heart to please help us get this to 10,000 signatures, because this petition all along, what's driven me is giving those a voice once again and being heard by the government, because I wrote to the government last year, a number of people, and I was totally ignored.
John Gilmore, I know that this is something you believe in so passionately. You've come down today, I believe, from the West Midlands to be with us. You've driven, you've waited all day patiently because there's breaking news in Epping. You're dedicated, you're a wonderful man. Your heart is in it. Get that back on our screens now. Let's get the petition back up. It's currently at just over 5,000. You know what to do, GB News viewers. You guys out there can make a difference. Go to the petition's website, type in providing funding to preserve and protect cemeteries around the UK, sign it, get it in. Let's get that to 10,000. Let's make them listen. Let's make John Gilmore a happy man, and let's take care of our cemeteries across the country. John, an absolute pleasure. You're a diamond. Thanks again,
God bless you.
for coming in, mate, to see us today
Thank you.
at GB News. Absolute pleasure. Cheers, mate. Now, if you've surged some holiday sun this year, here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're thinking of heading further afield for a holiday, well, you can expect some thunderstorms across the south of France, the Alps, northern Italy. Breezy for Portugal, extending into Madeira and the Canaries, that breeze. Across much of Iberia, it's fine, but towards the north into Andorra, the south of France, more especially northern Italy and the Alps, some very heavy and lively thunderstorms are expected. Plenty of sunshine, meanwhile, for Greece. Temperatures back closer to average following the heatwave last week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welsh women say they were stunned when an Airbnb host rejected their booking with the only explanation given, because you're from Wales. The pair had planned a night out in Manchester to attend a concert, but now accuse the host of outright xenophobia. One of them joins us now live to share exactly what happened and why she believes it's a case of discrimination. Joining me now is Gemma Louise Goff. Gemma, thank you so much for joining me. I can't believe
Thank
your
you.
story. It sounds astonishing. So basically, you and your friend, you're in your 30s. You're not exactly, teenagers. You're not a group of young men. Booked an Airbnb to go and see a gig. Tell me what happened then.
Well, we found the Airbnb. It looked really clean. It was in the centre. It was exactly what we wanted. Just a bed for the night. And we messaged. We paid up front. And she then messaged within the hour. Sorry, we had the email saying that it was declined and refunded. So we'd messaged and said, like the message says, really politely, hi, why has it been declined, with a kiss on the end? And she literally only wrote that one word, and Wales was in capital letters, so it was more like against Wales. It was utter shock.
What did you think when you read? I mean, did you think it was a joke? Maybe she was sort of like, had messaged you when she was drunk and it was just a joke? Or I can't believe anyone would actually say that.
I've never faced discrimination on any level before, so the experience was quite surprising and unsettling at the same time. But I was in utter shock. It made me feel instantly like an outsider and not welcome for the simple fact I'm from Wales.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 10 to 6 now. I've got severe job envy here because our national reporter, Doogie Beattie, is in Benidorm. Here he is, Doogie Beattie, talking to GB News viewers out in Benidorm. Doogie, I'm so jealous. Tell us, what are people telling you out there in Viva España?
Well, you should be jealous. It's beautiful out here. 35 all day today. And yes, I have been asking people, what is their main worry? What are they looking at in the news? And not one of them has said about migrants. Not one of them has said about health, but they have said about Rachel Reeves' potential tax rate on their properties. And we've spoke to the Irish and the English, and now it's the turn of the Welsh. What do you think of Rachel Reeves' potential rate?
I think it's a joke. We've worked all our life. I've worked from the age of 16 for the last 30 odd years. I've paid my taxes, I've paid my national insurance and everything else. I've saved to buy my own property, and I think it's an absolute disgrace.
An absolute disgrace, would you agree? Coming from Wales, a Labour country?
I would, yeah, definitely.
And do you think it's a big mistake for them?
Yeah, not that I understand it totally, but...
I think they'd already burnt their bridges. And
well, there you go, Martin. That is the word from Benidorm all day. People out here enjoying their holidays. They're not worried about anything else. They are just worried about their houses, their homes, their income. They're working hard to pay for their holidays. You can see here all these people here, GB News people. They all like GB News. These lot here, give it a cheer, lads. GB News, GB News. There you go. I mean, you couldn't help it, could you? You couldn't help but love the place. It's getting a bit rowdy here on the strip, but all day we have been down in the beach, and it has been absolutely.
Okay, Doogie Beattie, you've just frozen there, but look, thank you very, very much, Doogie Beattie. Fantastic stuff, and again, just thank all those people there for sharing GB News, and it's an astonishing sight, Doogie Beattie. You managed to get a bunch of sober people in Benidorm. It's one of those jobs, anyone who's a reporter will go, someone's going to swear, someone's going to get some part of their body out, someone's going to do something completely inappropriate. So you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants. As you can see there, playing in that Spanish music, Doogie Beattie. I can imagine him with a rose between his teeth now, a sombrero atop his somewhat sizable head, a Guinness in his hand. He's an Irishman. Doogie Beattie, let's get back to you. Have you managed to find any Guinness in Benidorm?
No Guinness in Benidorm so far. There is an Irish pub actually just down across the road. I must have a look at it. Might be a bit of whiskey. Live to do, and then I might just go hunting for that whiskey.
Doogie Beattie, I think you've earned that drink, mate. Thank you very very, very much. We had a couple of problems with the connection there, Dougie Beat. Absolute pleasure. Dougie Beat has been waiting patiently. Do you know, he had a €5 gut-buster breakfast at 8 a.m. this morning. What a trooper. He's been going all day, kept alive by British breakfast, traditional British breakfast in Benidorm. No doubt he's had a couple of San Miguels there. Dougie Beattie, absolute pleasure. Now, up next is Jubes & Co, of course, guaranteed, no doubt, to be going on with that incredible news today that the Bell Hotel in Epping has been dramatically shut down. 14 days' time, the asylum seekers inside, almost entirely young men, will be vacated from the premises. But where will they go next? Because the boats won't stop. The gangs haven't been smashed. Locals we've been speaking to simply fear they'll be moved into houses of multiple occupancy, perhaps in the same locale, perhaps in the same street. I'll be back tonight. I'm covering for Nigel Farage, but up next is the queen of primetime debate. It is the glorious Michelle Dewberry.
Thank you very much for that, Martin. I've got to say, though, I'm halfway on my way to Benidorm now. It looks absolutely fabulous there. But look, I'll be taking you guys to Epping live to get the reaction from locals to that monumental High Court decision that's just taken place. And also, Reform UK's Mayor Luke Campbell, he will be joining me to talk about the downside of the UK-US trade deal. I can tell you now, job losses looking likely. Not a good day. Grab yourself a cup of tea, get yourself comfortable, and I will see you in a sec.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Quite a grey day for many today. Tomorrow starts off pretty drab, but it should turn sunnier. Again, not a lot of rain in the forecast. Slightly cooler feel tomorrow as well as this cold front sinks south. We've got this weather front across the southwest. That's been providing some heavy showers over Devon and Cornwall. Still a few of those moving through during this evening. The old rumble of thunder isn't completely out of the question, but they do tend to fade away during this evening, disappearing by midnight, maybe affecting the Channel Isles. Bit of drizzle, perhaps at times in some central and eastern parts of England, but most places dry. Quite a lot of cloud, keeping the temperatures up again in the south, but clearer skies are arriving across Scotland, allowing temperatures to dip down well into single figures in the countryside, but also allowing plenty of sunshine here for Wednesday. For much of England and Wales, though, it will be another fairly grey start, perhaps some breaks in the cloud across the south coast of both England and Wales. Northern Ireland and Scotland should have a brighter day than today. I know we've seen quite a bit of sunshine on the west coast of Scotland, but generally across the mainland of Scotland we'll see the cloud breaking up through the morning to reveal some sunnier skies here during tomorrow. And I'm pretty optimistic across England and Wales too that cloud will tend to break up through the morning. So by lunchtime, many places seeing lengthy spells of sunshine. May take a little longer in southernmost counties of England for that cloud to break, and still the possibility of some cloud at times affecting the east coast. But generally it turns sunny through tomorrow. Temperatures about average for the time of year, high teens, low 20s, maybe 23 or 24 in the south. Feeling cooler on the east coast, but generally you'll notice that cooler feel more particularly in the evening as temperatures fall away under what will be largely clear skies. The dry weather likely to continue for most of us into the weekend with a mixture of sunshine and cloud. Cooler mornings, but generally temperatures by day into the 20s.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Congestion on the A63 eastbound in Kingston upon Hull between the A1166 and the A1033 is causing up to a 20-minute delay. In Staffordshire, a broken-down vehicle on the A38 southbound between the A513 and the A5192 is causing lane closures. Normal conditions are expected between 6 and 6:15 this evening. Congestion is also on the M25 clockwise between junctions 29 and 30 in Thurrock, with delays at 7:15. And on the trains, services between Stratford-upon-Avon and Leamington Spa on Chiltern Railways are disrupted. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes & Co. coming up tonight's victory over in Epping as the Migrant Hotel, which is essentially the epicentre now of all of these asylum hotel protests, is set to close. We will take you live to Epping for the reaction of the locals, and brace yourself. Another tax is being explored, this time a property tax. We'll delve into that one. And the downside of the much celebrated UK-US trade deal? Well, let's discuss. I'll be joined by Reform UK's Mayor Luke Campbell. We'll look at job losses, which many are suggesting could impact up to thousands of people.